one of those terrifying nights of night sweats and searching for peace, searching for the Lord. Lord is peace. Jesus is peace. If there be any testimony of healing, understand me, that would be good. If there be anything worth noting, that would be good. If there be anything at all that we should pay attention to, we're going to find out what that is right now. I thought I'd play something nice to set the mood. It's just a heavy night. It's just a heavy night. We're at 3:19 a.m. Mountain Time. As promised, I usually show up about this time, Fisherman's Hours. I'm just trying to shake off all the pain and suffering I feel from all over the world. Trying to be able to get through this thing. I know what you're thinking. Boy, that's a great song. I mean, Zeph, why don't you do more like that? It's not mine. It's just a radio stream. But yeah, thanks anyway. I do have good taste. Yes, I can do elevator music. No problem.
Would you like me to do by the numbers and so it could be commercially successful?
Let's just enjoy this. Who cares who makes it? I can make, you make it, it doesn't matter. Yeah. It's one of those heavy nights. One of those horrible, horrible times where people feel just unappreciated and unacknowledged and just trashed. Oh, what's the use? I'm going to wind up back here anyway. I'm going to wind up back here anyway. I'm going to wind up right back on my knees. Right back on my knees. And while I'm there on my right there. Right there. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. These are the words that I spake to you while I was yet with you, that all things must be fulfilled, which were written in the law of Moses and the prophets, concerning me. You see, the word does fulfill, and the word also heals, as you've just seen. I mean, I'm jumping ahead, as you will notice later on today when you look back, and that's good. Yes, welcome. This is the Zeph Report pod. I do go live. Yesterday there was kind of a lot of people on the stream. I mean, it was like, I think, for not announcing anything and just going out, I think there were like 81 people on the stream. And now, of course, it becomes a pod that goes everywhere. It's all over the place. And it was the kind of podcast that I have to say you would have never have gotten because of my embarrassment and shame, and all my issues would have prevented such a thing from going forth. I'm using a new mic tonight. I'm using an Earthworks handheld mic, and I'm in Studio B. That's my mobile studio. That's using an RME interface and all kinds of stuff. So you might be able to get more out of it than it all depends. Yesterday I was in the chair. I have a certain chair, and I sit in the dark. And I kind of stare upwards. And what happens is, I go into kind of a stream of consciousness in a way. It is, but it isn't. And I think I'm going to go ahead and play a song while I secure my area here. Well, we can't go through this anymore at 3 a.m. where there's interruptions, and that's why I'm in Studio B. But if it gets to the point where I have to have a mobile vehicle to have peace, I've already spent $50,000 on my dog, trying to keep her contained. Okay, that's better. Yes, that's better. I'm back. Yes, this... Well, this is, sound design. That's what I do. I do sound design. I used to work in the movies, so we had to have things like that. Yes, so anyway, the mic that I'm using is I still have to get in that position. I still have to get like the psychiatrist's couch. Not that I have a chair. And what happens is the consciousness just goes out there beyond the walls and beyond the ceiling. And you don't have any control of what you're going to talk about when you're in that chair. I'm just kind of like a kamikaze. I hope the Lord's Spirit hits. Boom. Slam. Right? And no matter how ugly or beautiful or anything it is, whatever we think about it, it's going to be real. And that is what I'm always after, something that's real. It doesn't really matter if someone else says it's real or not. To me, if there's people that go, wow, that's real or that's not, or they ignore it, I got to feel that it's real. I got to somehow understand, that the Lord is there, and whatever it is, it's going to be, while you think you're being linear, while you think you're being speaking on a topic, while you think if it sounds to you out there like it does in my headphones, then I don't think it's going to, you could hear better than this even on an FM radio, but they do things to it when it becomes a podcast. They step it down. They don't give me the bandwidth. They don't give me the bit rate. They just keep scratching it on down. We play music on Spreaker. It's an awful experience because half of the data that we took, so much time and labor to bring to you is gone. But people seem to want to listen to that more. Excuse me. At SoundCloud, we put up 48K to 32-bit float studio masters, which have absolutely nothing changed from the way it was mixed in the studio, and we can't get people to play those. So it's, I'm going to put them up there anyway for that one guy that's going to download a beautiful studio master. But most are content to listen on Spreaker, so I don't think people are very good at music appreciation out there. Well, I've done it too. But I have a certain pair of headphones that are just for the internet, for like SoundCloud listening or for other sites that allow higher, like Bandcamp. And, but, I guess it's the streaming world, and in saying this, I'm hoping Spreaker ups its game and gives artists, a little more, just about 256K MP3, or at least that, if not, uncompressed WAV files or things like that should be allowed to be played. Anyway, yesterday was very heavy. I'm having so much trouble. I was doing just fine before I hit record. And I can always tell when something's going to happen because of all this internal and external, the attacks that start coming in the most minute of ways. And it never fails that when you're going to talk about something, the attacks come ahead of time. They could even come a day ahead of time. And when I talked about the dove and the broken egg and the white dove that gave me the broken egg, intentionally, which is something that you don't see doves interacting with human, do you? In that way, just flying up and giving you a broken egg. But there was a sadness that occurred as well. But then there was some kind of strange healing, some kind of a change ever since that moment. Like, definitely like a spell, a curse, something had been broken. And so much energy released. And I'm like, how much energy has gone into holding us down so that we can't come out with anything. Everything is suppressed. And everything takes effort, and everyone is tired, and it's hard to just keep doing anything because it's just down, down, down. Well, welcome, to this world. The world, I will explain this to you now because this is very important. First of all, the world is falling apart, but the world has gone to the devil, okay? It's that en masse, the people have gone to Satan's side. If you do not go to Satan's side, you will be oppressed. And they will push you down, down, down to stop your voice from getting out there. Because it might influence other people that, hey, you don't have to sell your soul to do this or that. The devil, which exists in the mind, okay? Exists in the air, which is the mind and the airwaves, yes? Has a monopoly on all the things that you hear, on things that go viral. I know there's some good things that go viral. I'm not saying it's all bad, but it's very limited in scope. There's a few things that are good that go viral, but not a lot of things. But if you're definitely a threat to this situation, If you have some kind of spiritual gift, in other words, then you will be suppressed on YouTube and elsewhere. You will be suppressed. And and I realize there's many people that are very, they take that personally, like it means they're a failure. And it doesn't. I mean, my strategy is I have no strategy except that I just blanket the internet with everything, everywhere. And so, you beat the devil by, you get a few over here, you get a few there, a few here, a few there. And then see what happens. It compounds as people share and they blog and they reblog and they make videos and they do things from these podcasts. And pretty soon you do a Google search and it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And but you can't look at any one thing. You see Spreaker 50 plays. You see, Podbean's good. It's got 2.3 million plays, but then they threw our plays out. We were growing at like 100,000 a week or something, and then they threw those out, and they made sure that they put a governor on us over there. So we're inching up, but so what I do is I just do 10 times more podcasts, and that will and 10 times more music. We'll just do 10 times more output. We'll just work 10 times harder. It's not really work. I mean, this comes to you organically. It's that somehow the Lord made a way to do more production and more studio podcasts like this one, which is in response, in a sense, to being governed or tamped down. And, so we spread it around. Like I say, it's at Spreaker, it's on SoundCloud, it's over at Podbean, ZephDaniel.podbean.com, or I think it's just the ZephReport.com. It goes there. And that's a good place because everything is kind of archived all the way back to 2002. You can find the most odd things. And I might start doing that. I might start, reblogging these podcasts from the past. One day we might just do a 24-hour thing where I just do, it just is on a loop or it just plays one after the other from just different times, because it's very interesting as you go back and see the things we were concerned about, the things that I talked about, the things that were going on in the world back then. But anyway, yesterday was that day where something struck big. It all started with that dove. And then I changed. I've changed. I was changed. I've spoken, bravely before where, I just kind of got depressed. Nothing really happened. But something happened yesterday, and part of it was the clarity in speaking about something that is a global curse on humanity, not an individual here, there, or over there. That it is that the somehow the ritual abuse of children, and it's all ritual abuse, is protected by society, and therefore, and a lot of other things like the throwing out of God, the abuse of children now in schools. That you can go across the board and find every reason that God would smack this thing to oblivion now. And indeed, He is. But what's happening is we're being consumed in our iniquity, simply subsumed. Perhaps a better word, subsumed in our iniquity, in our brazen, rebellious, sinful nature. Has been loosed. They never will have a new world order because the world will be destroyed before they can ever get to that point. And they will be destroyed because they will be consumed in their iniquity. It's like the Tower of Babel at this point. It's Sodom and Gomorrah. It's the Tower of Babel. It's all of that. And just as people have said, and I'm here as an end times voice, that God put me here to do that. We looked at one thing yesterday that had, the odd thing about the abuse that I went through, which is not called abuse. I mean, that was just normal treatment for kids back then in that time. And it was a ritual abuse. It wasn't a casual thing. There was like a formal thing, like here we have the indoctrination of the kids. And the women sit around in a little sewing circle outside the arena where the sex goes on. And then we have the adults coming in and look, and basically practically babies there being molested. And the mothers are sitting there sewing their, gossiping, and just like they're at the beauty salon. Can you believe that? Like it's a matter of fact, ho-hum thing. And we got to get the kids, indoctrinated. He's got to start early, and that's a mother's job. I kid you not, it's literally that way. No, when they present it a whole different way, and it's all very Hollywood-esque. If I were you, I would put a red flag up now, and I would never listen to them again when they lie like that. What I said, no one has said, because they weren't there. They lie about being there. Oh, I've survived. Well, then you would have the same exact testimony as me, because it's the same all over the city and all over the world. So where is it? Cough it up. And they can't. Oh, well, they can't. Anyway, we were born into this world, and, we didn't make the rules, You've got two options. You have one, you find out the way the world works, and then you either adapt to it, self-corrupt yourself or look the other way on the corruption, initiate and indoctrinate in, or, you rebel and be an outcast and a loser. And then in certain circles, there is no option of opting out because of the illegal activity that goes on. It's like you got to kill the witnesses, So they, kill people, the kids that come up lame. They're too sensitive. They're artistic. They're something. They're just too sensitive to just get with it. So our option is they either get institutionalized and be a burden on the family, or they just have an unfortunate accident, and life goes on. The dirty work has been done, so we can have a placid little Leave It to Beaver society. So it kind of makes the whole thing a joke, obviously. But and like I told a guy yesterday, that the guy that's working for me here, I told him, I said, look, the whole world, the problem the whole world has is the way it treats its children. I saw yesterday there was in the Middle East, these Muslims getting married to kids, and then they beat the crap out of them and kill them. Having kids involved in marriage is a perversion. Going to Morocco, gay boys going to Morocco for the little boys over there is a perversion. They go over there because it's normal in the Middle East. I don't know if you know that. The sodomy of little boys is a normal activity in the Middle East. And also in ancient, not that ancient, Greek culture. Well, there it's more 12-year-olds. But, I mean, that's the normal norm. I mean, that's considered romantic. The marrying of children goes on in the Middle East all the time. And, and sexual relations, go on. And it's celebrated by the entire society as normal. And it's been going on for thousands of years. We in the West are sequestered from a lot of that because they know we couldn't handle it. So maybe they don't teach that in school. Maybe they do now, as they're trying to promote that here. They're trying to make the same way children are treated in the Middle East. They're trying to promote that same treatment here. In other words, to take the safety net off the children so that there can be open legal access, so that there can't be any rebellion then if someone is coming up and they're having a problem with their body or their sex, or they're having a trouble and they're told to join the orgy or join the thing or do what the adults say or pull your pants down or do this or do that, and they have a problem with it. They're not allowed to. They would then be punished by the school. Let's say they would be sent home. This actually happened to me once. I was sent home, and they said, you come back with your father. I came back with my dad. And I said, well, first of all, what did I do wrong? Of course, I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't participate in their ritual. I think they're having a ritual masturbation or something for the teacher, something. All the kids were in on it, though. They were all part of it. I'm like, what school do you go to where you're sitting there at your desk and then everyone's like, suddenly looking at you? What kind of situation? I mean, what kind of satanic? It's a satanic ritual, right? And I didn't understand what they were talking about, and then he sent me home, and then I had to come back with my father, and then the guy changed the subject. He let me back in the class, and it was just, let me tell you what happened there. The dimension shifted, because all the kids were like in a hive mind. They were all just, it was like they were from outer space. They weren't the people that I knew. They weren't the kids I knew. That light. Can we get the lights down, please? Please. Thank you. They weren't the kids I knew. It was like they were changed. And then the next day that I went back, when I got there with my father, they just chit-chatted about nothing. And then I was back in the class, and the kids acted like nothing ever happened. Like it was a different set of kids. You talk about gang stalking, how that was, what age? I think 15. Private school. I was 16 because I had gone to Harvard school, then I dropped out, and I had to go to these special schools, and I kept getting kicked out of those because I wasn't able to study, or I wasn't doing very well. But I remember having to go back with my father, and they just chit-chatted, and then it was like nothing ever happened. Like nothing like that would ever happen. I mean, you know that. I mean, that defies logic, that sort of thing. Now, well, what was strange about it is it was ritual, satanic ritual. It wasn't just kids playing around with sex, or, like you might have sex education, and, they'd have little dolls to show you how it's done. Or now I guess kids just go ahead and do it. But it's not satanic ritual. This was a satanic ritual, which was involved with initiation, indoctrination, all that stuff of the kids. And they were all indoctrinated already, that these are just kids. These are not, by the way, elite kids. They're semi-elite, but I mean, they're not. These are just a random sampling of kids. All down on the page, all knew exactly what to do. All were, they were all in the club, all in the thing, and they were there to get me into the same thing. And then the next day, the same kids, only nothing ever happened. Now, how's that for when you're like 16 or 17 and you get hit with something like that, with this hive mind thing where they're all suddenly turn and stare at you. And, well, I just, the problem I was having wasn't so much, what they, the bizarre, whatever they wanted, the problem, because they won't tell you exactly, you know what I mean? They'll just stare at you. It was the unison in how they all acted as a group, as a hive. And it was completely illegal. The guy, obviously the teacher was a complete pervert, and but they were all. I'm like, what, And then there started being manifestations, like when I didn't understand what they were talking about. Then I didn't really. I was just like being stared at. When that happened, then when there was resistance, and after a while, people started yelling and screaming. Someone would storm out of the class. They wouldn't tell you why. And then all I know is I got blamed for it all. And I didn't say one word. Well, in other words, my parents were supposed to have taught me that, the kids are all going to get it on now, and, to the teacher's delight. And I guess I wasn't indoctrinated fully before going to class. But school wasn't anything to do with... that's an example of satanic ritual abuse of children. Granted, young adults, teenagers, in a classroom setting. And, well, the reason it wasn't sex education is because no one could say what it was. You know what I mean? That there's like the rule. They can't say what it is. You have to self-corrupt into it. And so I looked at that and I was like, this is so, Rosemary's Baby had already been out, and, it was exactly like that, and it was all, it was satanic ritual abuse, exactly that thing, in it was a private school. I won't mention the school. Well, the school still exists. I think, oddly enough, it was in Hollywood then, but now it's in Malibu of all places. And I always was, like when I saw it there in Malibu, it was like in the back of a shopping mall or some kind of office building complex or something. And I saw it was up on an upper floor. I freaked out. I was like, gosh, that's, I felt like Judy when with the thing in the basement at Oral Roberts University being put into a ritual there, which is very odd because Sister Judy, you have to go back in the archives to get that, but Sister Judy being in, a setting like Oral Roberts University, a Christian setting, being put into a ritual, a sex ritual in front of an audience, as if it's normal. See, that's the thing you don't get. I mean, sorry, I'm not trying to insult anyone. Let me put it. The thing that we don't get, okay? Sometimes I say you when I should say we, and I apologize, is that these things are done in settings that would ordinarily be for some other purpose. Like you're going to school, you're learning math, it's time for math class, you sit down and, all of a sudden, everything stops and everyone's staring. It's a satanic, a demonic possession of all the people with one spirit. And it's this supernatural thing that came over the classroom. And then, like I say, I went back with my father the next day, and I was admitted, and then no one knew anything. And I kept saying, "What was that?" They didn't know what happened the day before because it wasn't them who was there. This is the deep dark secret. Well, it looked just like them, but I suppose you could beat it out of one of them. And say, okay, there's something going on. Okay, they kill you if you don't go along. I understand. There's something. Okay, I don't want to say any more about it, or I'll get killed. There's that. In a private school, not the private school, the hoity-toity school that I went to, and I guess I didn't drop out. I was dropped out, and then I was going to these kind of like school for kids with problems, and that's what they tried to pull on me, and even threw me out of the class for wondering what they were doing, because people started manifesting, people started going into hysterics, fits, people stormed out of the classroom. There's all kinds of stuff in the silence that in the non-addressing of what was going on there. And I was like, wow, this is really, I'd already been I'd already been sequestered. I was already, they were trying to get me back into society, you know what I mean? And and I ran into that. And I was having a really hard time, just a really hard time, because it seemed like this weird, spooky, supernatural stuff was going on all over the place, you know what I mean? And people were manifesting, they were turning into something else, and then I was blamed completely that I'm the one that's delusional, I'm the one that's making it up in my head, I'm the one that's noticing things that I shouldn't notice, I'm the one that's being a problem, I'm the one that's and basically, let me just sum up. Let's say, well, what was that there? These are just garden variety Satanists, is all they are. That was a satanic ritual abuse of me, but it was a ritual, an initiation rite of again making me viable in society. Done at school by a teacher who would have no. When I wondered what he was doing, I was thrown out by just asking a question, like, "What do you mean?" And that was apparently some kind of crime and could get me killed. Well, if that's our society, look, here's my point. Not to vet my own private stuff, but here's my point. If that's what society has come to, then that society won't last. I can tell you the rest of what will happen. If that's the classroom, well, then, of course, it's just like Papa kills babies, right? It's the same kind of thing, right? That's the entryway into all that. Well, then God is dead. Yes, 1965. God's thrown out of the schools. The devil runs the schools now, including, the orgiastic rituals to the devil that go on now in the classroom, apparently. And if any kid doesn't go along with it, they are thrown out of class, sent home for misbehavior, which they didn't do. Their parents have to come talk to the headmaster to get them back into the school. And then when they get back into the school, the kids that were there in that horrible incident that happened all cover it up like it never happened before, and they don't even know what happened. I mean, it's just like they're different people. Whether they are or whether it's a cover-up, what does it matter? It's Rosemary's Baby on steroids every day in a school, admittedly a private school, but a school nonetheless, with a swath of kids from around Los Angeles, all seemingly down with the program. You can add other dimensions to it too. You could say this, that that the school, those kids were chosen as a setup to lure you in because your parents wanted you to be on the dark side, on Satan's side, and they were having trouble getting it done, so they hired the school to do it. Okay, you could then it would be very elaborate conspiracy and involving lots of money then. Fine. I can make it more elaborate if you like. Whether it was organic, in other words, that's just the way they roll, but then, later on in my time of denial, and when I saw that school, oddly enough, had moved to Malibu, and they were involved in satanic ritual abuse in the classroom, and there they were in Malibu ready to indoctrinate the Malibu kids, it freaked me out because I'd already was convinced that there's no such thing, that I was obviously delusional. Nothing like that happened. By the way, that's a brand new testimony today that you haven't heard before. Something happened to me. Something changed. Something changed where I could speak like that. I don't even know what. Maybe God is just, because you can't have people speaking like that. And, I've been kind of around the edges of this thing for a long time, but now it's just becoming a matter-of-fact thing, which is unusual because usually you need a drum roll, you need to be on Oprah, you need to talk about, this horror of ritual abuse in your neighborhood back in Cincinnati somewhere or wherever it is. You know what I mean? And and meanwhile, they're covering up the whole thing by having the interview. Oh, gosh. Yeah. Well, I do like this mic. I thought it sounded terrific on Trish's voice. I'll have to get one for both of us. No, I love the Shure mic too, but it's just there's a certain resonance in this thing that is just. I have another mic by a company called DPA that's supposedly like this, and it just doesn't have this tone. This is like a Neumann studio mic. It's on that level, you know what I mean? But it's a handheld mic, and I'm just noticing that in telling this story, you're getting this resonance in my voice that you don't get on an iPhone, the iPhone studio. That's just, see what that's for is there's a chair, like I said, I get in that chair and then something, who knows where it goes, right? And and then I have to have the courage to be there and just let things happen. And then you use that, the iPhone that has the same studio built into it. And you use that as a way of, getting as raw as it got yesterday, which was unprecedented, actually. I couldn't believe I did that. And then there was no taking it back. In the past, when I'd have a moment like that or, a segment like that, the whole podcast would get thrown out because I would suffer such shame and guilt. Well, you do get like suicidal thoughts, or not suicidal, but very bad thoughts come after doing something like that. I can't. It's just programming. It's like, you can never tell, right? or if you tell, you're going to die. It's that kind of thing. And I think this is what God is up to right here with this program. And that one yesterday, I noticed is being played a lot. But you think it's being played a lot now? Wait till about a year from now. It'll be millions and millions and millions of plays. Spread out all over the place. Well, because when you spread stuff out, it travels. Once it's on the net, so it doesn't bother me if there's 50 plays here, 60 plays there. We get 100,000 on, of pods on Podbean at times, but that's not really it. It's this compounding of the play. See, this is a strategy that I've kind of developed on my own, and I'm now realizing a couple things about compounding. So when they try to block you, and a program like this, in terms of in the spirit, they will do everything in their power to make sure this is just nothing to see here, some stupid sideshow podcast, and it doesn't matter to me what they see. We're going to address that because there's an abuse thing there too. But let's get back to this. In the classroom. And I kept thinking, of course, this is way before, something like The Wall came out with Pink Floyd. But when I'd hear the, we don't need no blah, 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 the kids singing in the classroom, The Wall, right? I would hear, I would go back to those memories of these kids. And I remember there was a girl sitting next to me. Let's get to it. And she was saying, she was trying to tell me, don't cause trouble. Just go along with it, because, in other words, she was concerned because, you get killed, right? And that was like, she was really frightened for me, so I did get an elbow to the side, like, don't do that, and I said to her, do what? Then he interrupts and he goes, all right, well, you better, go home. And I'm so happy to have brought you that brand new thing that you've never heard before. I'm so happy that it's like all these memories are now since the dove, it's like they're just coming one after the other. That was not so long. I mean, that was a teenage thing. That was 17. Let me now just tell you what that means, though. You see, what that means is that if that's the fabric of our society, if that's the rule for kids in all classrooms, in all churches, in all corporations, in all of life, everywhere, all the time, then I would say to you that, I'm sorry, I don't have a message of hope. So if you need, we're going to get America back or something, it's not here. Okay. I'm talking about the world here. If that's the norm, that the world is based on the abuse of children, then that society will not be there in the future. It will be consumed. It is on the verge of being I'm frankly amazed that we even have any life to talk about stuff like this. I'm kind of amazed that we're still here, actually. I'm amazed that I'm actually here. I'm so happy I lived to tell about that incident, though. I'm so happy, Lord, that I lived to tell, that I was able to tell that particular incident, because there's a lot of people out there, the same exact thing happened to them. And I'm here to tell you that God not only hates that, but he will destroy the society that promotes that. Wherever it is in existence, anywhere. Because it turns these kids into slaves, to spiritual slaves, enslaved to Satan. It wasn't like, it's not sex education. It's satanic ritual that the classroom becomes. It's got nothing to do with sex, really. I mean, sex is how they operate, but that's not it. You're missing the point here. It's not abuse like you hear about, oh, my uncle abused me. That's not it. I'm talking about a collective, hive, organized ritual in the classroom where it's assumed that everyone understands what's going on. Where if anyone balks at it, they're sent home with a nasty note, and their parents have to come, bring them back. And then when the parent comes back with the son, in this case me, they chit-chat about anything but what just happened. They don't acknowledge anything happened at all. And then you go back to classroom, and they act like there was no incident, and nothing like that occurred, and that was just a flip of dimensions, or you're deluded, you need more medication, or something to that effect. No, you see, these rituals take place in other dimensions, right in front of you. That's why I said there could be. The same thing can happen in a bar. It's happened to Trish and me in a bar. The same exact thing that happened in the classroom happened to us in a bar in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The whole bar turned to us. It got so bad that we had to leave. As the whole bar turned like, oh, hey, you know, like singling us out. And then when I was trying to slip away, they all, in the outside tables, it was all them too. And they go, Elvis has left the building, talking about me. You know, just it's the whole harassment of the entire bar turning on, like they all knew who you were and they were all waiting for you there. But then you go back another day, as we have, and there's nothing like that, just like the classroom. There's just nothing like that going on. Now, you know, it was the bartenders getting mad. It was the guy next to us, you know, was going off. The other guy to the right, the guy behind, the tables over the left, the people having dinner. I mean, it was going on. They could have shut the door, killed us, cleaned it up, and then the next day, no one would be the wiser. And I'm sure that there have been restaurants used. They love to use restaurants for these, but they don't get a satanic ritual going unless the spirits take over and kind of change the atmosphere and change the dimension. And all these people are then connected with the hive. They're all like being operated as puppets, and you're the target, right? They could easily, you know, I mean, this has happened. You know, they could kill you, like I say, as a human sacrifice, and then, you know, people will clean it up. No one's the wiser. Life goes on. It never happened. I guess the people would just be missing persons reports. Well, we don't know what happened. Nobody in this town knows what happened, you know. So if you're investigating, you're barking up the wrong tree. All beholden to Satan and Satanism. All. 100%. So a town like that would tolerate such a thing would be, in essence, dead or gone already. You know, the dead, right? Because it's the dead that prey upon the living. But I've seen we were in there having a drink, everything was going fine, and then all of a sudden it just turned just like that. I didn't know who anyone was, but they certainly knew who we were. To me, it was just a random bar. It was no different than the classroom at 17 years old. How is it different? You know, I failed. We got sent away, and Elvis has left the building and all that, and they smugly went on with their little lives and their stupid little dinners and their stupid little bar. But I mean, that's a whole bar, a public bar, packed with people. You know, people coming, going, you know, the confusion of a bar. You know, they don't all turn and look at you, do they? Even outside tables were involved. Now, when we first arrived, there was nothing like that going on. It just changed and started going on. So it wasn't like anyone was waiting for us. You're too terrestrial. This is not of a terrestrial nature. This is a supernatural nature. It's almost impossible to explain because it's mind-boggling, because it's above our comprehension is why. The technology involved, and it is technology, okay? We'll admit that. But the technology involved is the same thing as the aliens, right? The same kind of magical, pseudo-magic, kind of weird supernatural stuff that you encounter the aliens and you see people you knew and the dead come back. You know, all kinds of things happen around the alien thing, right? That's the technology that's being used in that bar and in that classroom. And I dare say everywhere. I go to the church, to help me understand. And of course, I can't say anything because, I have a life here, Zeph. I just get out of here, please. And so we go on like that, knowing that if we don't take care of this problem, we're going to perish. But, I keep looking for trying to figure it out. That's all I'm really doing here. And in trying to figure it out, how it works, what it is, I get nothing but opposition from terrestrial humans who have everything to lose and nothing to gain by keeping this chain. And this is the chain. This is the chain. Not simply, yes, sexual abuse is horrible, okay? Especially of children, battered wives, all that. It's just horrible. But that's not the subject here at the Zeph Report. Okay, that's not what we're talking about. Make sure you understand that distinction, please, and don't just categorize these last two shows in the realm of abuse. That would be wrong. That would be incorrect. What we're talking about is far more profoundly evil than that, and profoundly bizarre. And again, the bizarreness is that high technology that's used, because after all, this is a business. It's very organized. It's the classroom. Go home with a little note to daddy. Come back with daddy, change the subject. Nothing ever happened. Try again. Only so many tries before we got to, put your kid in the mental hospital, Yeah, well, he just came from the mental hospital. We're trying to get him back in society. All right, let's just hit the reset button, try again. Maybe we'll get him that way. Now, everybody knows what I'm talking about because everyone is involved. Yet no one talks about what I'm talking about because everyone's involved. And until we address this, what I'm talking about, everyone's going to die. Their children in bondage, enslaved, and destroyed. Because we're at the time, and this is a prophetic statement, even though I try to go away from the, call it little p if you like, you know what I mean? But it is one of those. We're not idly talking about some curio here that's just, oh, that's interesting. Wow, what a fucked up society that is. No, I'm sorry. This is something much, much, much more like a warning. That when you see, oh no, it's not a warning that things are going to come back together. No. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, let's just be very clear, brothers and sisters, those of you who, thank God you're there. I always feel better when I see that, I'm not the only one, at this hour grappling with these things. It always makes me feel better, It's scary, these podcasts, because I suppose we could take them down after they're up, but they're already out, It's there's no turning back now. This is the story of the world. This is the main event today. If the millions and millions of people that need to hear this can't hear it because it's blocked or whatever, it's not my fault. I'll just let the Lord do what he does. I'm not going to go do anything about it, Oh, it'll get around. I was just thinking, it always gets around. I always see I do a Google on something and I'll see my name come up, a podcast, but I'll see it's blogged by a person in the video realm of YouTube. captures it, or a few people will from time to time, or take a segment and they'll put it out there. It just goes, it's hard to stop when it's like this today. It's hard to stop it from going everywhere. I mean, you can't stop it. It's whether or not it becomes the fully in consciousness. I've always been the hidden one. I'm hidden. I'm hidden, eternal, and Daniel the prophet. I mean, it's like you go to the name the Lord gave me, Zeph E. Daniel. And it's so strange because I started writing Lamb via the Holy Spirit. I actually got a tattoo on my wrist that says Holy Spirit, so it would help me to remind me that the Holy Spirit's going to write this book, Lamb. So I'm sitting there writing it, and I'm having all these experiences because this is all like just popping, like it is tonight, like it is right now. And it's just like, oh my God, how could it be more? It's so far over my pay grade. It's so far over my comprehension, all the things that are going on. But then, what the Lord wanted me to have was this ZED. It's like I couldn't think of anything for the minute. I just said, okay, well, I just went through the Bible and we got this name Zeph E. Daniel from the Lord. I was in the Spirit. And E doesn't even have a name. It's just the letter E. It had to be ZED. And that's, the Lord just pounded me on that. So when I had that as a pseudonym when writing Lamb, right? That would be my pseudonym, Zeph E. Daniel. But it's really coded ZED. That was the thing. And then he told me to make that permanent, that the old is dead, that we're never going to go back to that time, that there was a divide in my life, and I went with the Lord. But, there were people, I've done things in the world. I shouldn't have done anything in the world. I shouldn't have ever had a movie produced or anything like that. It just was the weird happenstance, but there are researchers out there trying to write about, the films I had done, and eventually they're going to, realize that some of them have been coming around about Zeph and Woody Keith and Zeph Daniel and this. I never made that a secret. I just always told people, I was given this name by it was no big deal, I thought. But people tried to shame me for it. I'm like, God, I ran into such ignorant people online that claimed to be Christians and prophets and seers, and they were all charlatans and handlers, and the same kind of just nasty group of people, right? And they tried to shame you for everything, and if you don't like comb your hair a certain way or look a certain way or say a certain thing or whatever, they just you're going to hell and you're of the devil. And you just can't get anywhere with it. I mean, I started just ensconced with these people. Then you want to know the kicker? You want to know the kicker of these people? Like the Lamb Cafe, for those of you around. A lot of these people were like assigned, and they were trying to get me to the dark side. I kid you not. And when I wouldn't go, then they tried to publicly shame me under the banner of Jesus. Now, would you ever do something like that? Would you ever? I mean, that just seems suicidal to me to do that in front of the Lord. I mean, obviously you don't believe in the Lord, and he says these people are all liars and fakes, right? But would you ever try to move someone to the dark side under the light of Jesus when it's a ministry of the Lord? Would you ever actually? Can you imagine what would happen to that person at some point in life? How they will be not just body slammed, but I mean, just destroyed, consumed, dead and beyond dead, never having been. Can you imagine before the awesome Lord trying to conform someone to Satan's side of things, which is basically society? Can you imagine the blasphemy involved? The utter disrespect for the Lord God Almighty in trying to move a person to the dark side through manipulation and whatnot and playground tactics or whatever they were doing. It became the same thing exactly as the classroom, with this unspoken word that no one will speak, that they want something from you. And if they don't get it, they will make sure your life is ruined, that your character is assassinated, that you are shamed beyond shame. When they're done with you, you want to put a bullet in your head. And that was the Christians that I met in the beginning with the Zeph Report. I'm just sitting here thinking, trying to put myself in their place and go, okay, so we all nod and wink. We all know what we're doing, right? Here comes Zeph. Okay, now let's back to your characters, everybody. Okay, now let's try this. Now let me quarterback this one. Can you imagine doing that before the Lord God? Can you imagine the destruction to your children, to your grandchildren, to your life in general, to your finances, to your health? Can you imagine the things that would happen to that person if I, the target here, am really a man of God, if I have God's unction and his protection? If you knew that, you would have to be not just ignorant, but utterly stupid, obviously. But the idea that you would it would be like throwing yourself into a buzzsaw, wouldn't it? I mean, it'd be committing suicide, wouldn't it? These people all got cursed. Some of them wound up in the New Age thing and UFOs and, just where they were setting up something waiting for me, and then I see that they've thrown the Bible out. They threw the Lord out. They're cool now. They've gone with it. Yeah, they lost their faith. Well, that's the one price they paid, right? They lost the way. They're mired in confusion. They'll just become feeble, old, and die. I mean, or sooner than that. Well, if you're going to trick a Lamb of God into trying to get them on the dark side by setting up a conference of Jesus, and then I go there just innocently, and it's all about this, gang rape, then I would say those people that were involved in something like that, obviously, spiritual consequences would be. I don't want to go into names or anything. If you've followed this, you understand. But who cares? It's repeated everywhere. That's why I don't want to focus on this guy or that guy. It's across the board. You show me people that are real Christians. Show me where they are. I'd love to know. Haven't seen them. The ones that I encountered were, like I said, well, the result from encountering me is they're out of it. They lost their faith. They lost their way. I didn't put a curse on them. I didn't put a fat one. I didn't say, God, deal with them. I asked God to protect me, but God dealt with them, and now they're off in whoever knows where they are, but they're not with the Lord. They're doing New Age stuff, UFOs, they're still going, but I mean, they're not doing the Jesus thing. Didn't work, right? That let's get a new bag going now. And there's still these idiots that go listen to their programs. How can that be? If I listen to a program and it's dead or going in circles, I just stop listening. Right? I just stop listening. If it isn't like on the level of this, right, you're getting right here, I'm out of here. I stop listening. If it isn't real, if it's just like to have a show and be cool, to have people call in and talk about UFOs and conspiracies, because that's what we're interested in. I mean, if it's on that very low level of conscience, that's like the people listen to Coast, are at a very low level. They're very easily satisfied. I'm not. I need something to happen. Radio to me is an encounter. As soon as I figured out Coast to Coast was carnival barkers, I never listened anymore. Because they don't do anything. They don't, they scream about the New World Order now, whoop-de-f and do. They talk about things that they ridiculed me for talking about. Now they talk about them as if they're matter of fact. Oh, that's nice. But still, it's dead air. The people on it are dead. The guests that show up there, they're dead. If anything does show up that's real, they want to quash it. The producer over there told me herself. She said that, we like Satan, said Lisa Lyon to me on the telephone. And that's, and don't mention Jesus, she said. And when I did, then Art Bell got mad and he threw me off. I mean, there's this, you're dealing with the Antichrist spirit. Go ahead, listen then. But don't then come to me with your Jesus shit, okay? Don't want to hear it. If that's your bag, if that's what you're surrounded with, then you got nothing. And you got nothing to say to me. That's going to be real. I need to survive. I need to live. And I cannot live on this kind of crap that gets doled out for commercial purposes, for money making. I can't do it. It doesn't feed me. I can't live. I need to live. The Word of God I can live with. Yes, I have profanity today with the Word of God going at the same time. So what? You want to judge me? This isn't going for my friend. This is going out there to the... You want to shame me with some scripture so I'll be shamed? Oh, God, that shame and guilt that was put on me as a young child. I ruined my whole life. And then, they knew that I had that thorn, so they came around with their scriptures, and they came around with all that, stoking back the shame, getting it higher, more. They knew exactly what they were doing because they bugger their own children. Yeah, they knew exactly what they were doing, stoking up that self-destruct programming, making sure that guilt and shame got so that I'd apologize to people for having said the S word or the F, whatever they do in this Christian garbage. And I mean garbage. These are people that are not even conscious. They're just rote. I don't even know what's happened. They've been programmed. Most of them, here comes the compassionate side of me. Most of them have been abused themselves and been programmed to repeat the programming and the abuse on their children. And they populate the churches. Thank you very much, because that's what they expect there. To not upset the apple cart. The apple cart being what I described. So, I had a couple of Christians here, I remember, just recently. One woman was working on our cabinets or whatever. And, they started giving me all kinds of garbage. All kinds of attacks. And I said, I remember I told her I'm still dealing with trauma, from still working out my healing, She goes, well, I think all of us are traumatized. Trying to diminish my trauma, trying to diminish anything I had to say, trying to shut me up through shame. And she goes to this church now. She goes, oh, I love my pastor. I'm like, well, look what you just did to me. You just abused me. You don't even know it. And then her husband comes in and abuses. He completely tore into the Zeph Report. And he said, so your mother told you to clean up your room one day, and then you were traumatized, and that's what the Zeph Report is. And he works with Christian radio in Albuquerque. And it took me years to get over that abuse because I didn't want to believe it happened. That the worst abusers, the worst of all, are these people in these churches and around this Christian thing. I mean, they're the worst. But I mean, to then go about my testimony and about all that and just sum it up as being, you didn't go through anything. You're just, you know what I mean? It was just like in the movie, working with a producer I work with who goes publicly and says that I had incest fantasies, and that's basically what my story is. That's why I wrote Society. That's what he would say to the press. But now the press is figuring out that I'm Zeph. And there's a whole different story, isn't there? That his story was all lies. That man is a liar, and all he says is lies. And now if the press ever wants the real story, if this rubbery bullshit movie ever does anything more as a cult movie, well, then I guess a researcher, an author, would have to do a little digging. And boy, the story that it leads to, you don't want to say to the public. So we got a little problem here. You don't want to say to the public, that the origins of that screenplay or how that came about or what was going on. My story about being there and going through it is a movie in and of itself. It's very interesting. And I wouldn't be surprised if one day, they come to me saying they want to do a story about the story, about my testimony, about how I was writing the screenplay and hiding it because I had been brainwashed and not knowing that was the truth. The whole thing of how it led up to that point, and then it came to this real phone call where the impossible stuff, that it was all real, right? The phone call from someone that just happened. She was teaching tennis at my parents' house, and then she ended up. They had a tennis court in Beverly Hills. They had all that. I wasn't allowed in that house. But that she had that she got some job working for the casting assistant, and she had to read the script, and then she called me. And when she called me, the director was in the other room. To see, and I had this shock of revelation of, oh my God, my whole life I've been living a lie. I mean, it just hit me like a ton of brick. I couldn't handle it. And then he flipped out and he starts going, I don't want to be responsible for if you go nuts or if, this is just too much for me. Like let's just cancel the show. Let's just stop doing the film because it's led to this point. And then from that point on, I believe he had to lie. I started lying. I mean, I didn't want it to be that either. So I went to Italy and I came back with what was my ex-wife, Francesca's mother. And I remember the first day of shooting was going on, and I was all back, all brainwashed again, all put back together. It was all my fault. I was just crazy. And then I showed up there at the set. It was outside. I remember the first day was at Paradise Cove in Malibu, in the parking lot there and on the beach. Numerous movies have been filmed there. And I walked up to the director. And he goes, hey, we're doing our movie, like a little kid, all happy, Yeah, cool. That fucked up beyond belief. Like I told the author in Italy, I told him, I said, if I write answers to your questions of how this screenplay came about, how the whole thing, I said, I will become the story. You can't write this story. It's I will take over the story. It won't even matter. It's this other story. So I backed out because he's trying to do a story on these 1980s or 70s or whatever, rubbery cheap horror films. And it was kind of like an art form, right? And so they're writing this art book about the different people and about unproduced screenplays, and he's asking me about the Invisible Man, and everyone thinks I got fired from that. And the answer is I got paid to do a draft or two. I got paid like $10,000 for doing a draft, or more than that. I'm not exactly sure. I think it was 10 and 10, something like that. And pretty good for, it was like the H.G. Wells approach. And then, and then they decided to go with, George R.R. Martin and another thing. And he's the guy that did, the famous George R.R. Martin, the Game of Thrones guy. And obviously he was going to get $200K for his. So I was, it wasn't that I was fired. It's that they wanted to go a different way. But I suppose I was fired because they didn't want to do like a remake of the H.G. Wells story. They wanted to do but he was insinuating that I was fired. He wanted to know all about the juicy details. I just told him, I said, I can't go into the juicy details because, look, I gave him like a couple paragraphs. I said, we can't go there because look where it leads. You have to tell the whole story. The whole thing becomes, I become the story. I don't want to become the story, so I backed away. because that's not the way I want, if they're going to do a story about something. My story is not important because, see, here's the thing. I'm talking about universal things. I survived this, whatever this was, this crazy gauntlet, awful thing. And I've been trying to simply heal and understand and be loving to other people, not hating everybody. You know what I mean? I've been trying to, really thread the needle with this, with these experiences. And live a life, you know what I mean, and make a contribution and be able to speak succinctly on the internet for many years now about all of this as clearly as I can. And I do believe in the Lord God. I do believe in his son Jesus. I do believe in the Bible, even though I didn't begin that way, because God presented it to me. When I was beginning the healing journey, which he said would take a long, long time. I mean, just look what's happening now, 14 years later. Had I quit at, say, year 7, then you wouldn't have this now, which you didn't have back then. And why do you want this? Because it's going to cause healing of other people. That's why. Because it is a direct cause of healing in other people, but you can't heal yourself through understanding. It's the Lord that does something to you, like he did with me yesterday. He just changed me. And then all of a sudden my words became much more clear. Something happened with my speech. Something happened here. And I'm just mentioning it as it's going on. I mean, it's mind-boggling. I'm just mentioning it. But, people that want to do little books about horror movies and different things, they don't want to open this kettle of fish, this Pandora's box that I represent, right? Because what would happen? You know what I mean? It would change the whole life, wouldn't it? They wouldn't be doing little books about 80s rubbery horror, schlocky horror movies. See, a movie that I told one of you that I tried to find the original screenplay. If you saw the original screenplay, I don't know if we have it. I mean, maybe Trish knows. I don't know. Of Society. You have it? No, but that's the later version that was ended up being shot. I mean, if you had the original version, you'd probably say, "Wow, that kicks ass." It was meant to be an upscale. And okay, she says she thinks she has it. Well, I only mention it because somehow the film became somewhat of a cult. It's still around. They still play it. I can't even believe it. It's the thing I wish would die because my problem with it is that artistically it's a failure. And the people that did it are failures in terms of, they learned how the director, for example, that was his first time and he learned how to direct later. But I mean, back then, casting mistakes, just production mistake after production mistake. And now he's claiming credit for all the mistakes. Saying that he did all those on purpose because he's got a whole new generation of followers now who are saying that was genius. So now he's saying, yes, we did that on purpose. Oh, God. You see, a story about this would be just a classic movie. I mean, it would be, you'd have to do it mainstream, of course, with great actors and great everybody, or a great book. It would make a great story. I'm not the one to do it, but maybe there's somebody out there who will want to do it one day and collaborate with me and do things right. You know what I mean? Not some schlocky thing or some C-grade writers like that write these stupid conspiracy books. I'm not interested in that. I have a A-level story to tell, and I have generations. My family story, the rise and the fall, is extremely commercial in the sense that you're dealing with the rise of Los Angeles and the rise of the studio system and the rise of these power brokers, famous times in America, and the harsh years of the late 1940s and the Mickey Cohen and the whole Hollywood scene and Howard Hughes and you know what I mean? It goes there. So that's, to me, something that most people would be interested in. and it's a story that must be told in a mainstream fashion. I understand there's this other component about the world and about the hidden thing and breaking the chain, all that stuff that becomes me, which is why I would have to not be really involved. You know what I mean? And because what they do is this, I could be involved, but then I'm crazy. I'd have to eat that one. It couldn't be like, yes, everything I said on the Zeph Report I stand behind. Well, then we can't publish the book. We can't go forward with the story because, see, you interrupt the story. Just like that author has never contacted me again after I told him a couple of things. Because, you see, you can't just drop me in. He's going to have to not write about me. Because I become the story. Because of this unresolved conflict in the world today, something that's hidden that that society has evilly participated in. I always love it when people, especially people in high society, when they go, gosh, we were attacked by, I remember this was Barbara Simpson. She used to be a talk show host, but she's married to she's in, a San Francisco elite society. And I think all the news stuff she does is just a hobby, right? Kind of a trophy wife type of thing. And, right, in those circles, right, in those mega buck circles. And she goes on, when I was on the air with her, she goes, well, I don't see why they'd want to attack us. I mean, well, why are we attacked? What did we do? Like, we're the pristine United States. And she really believed that, just to show how deluded she was. I mean, she really believes that we have no guilt on our hands as the United States, that we have nothing to answer for, that there is no God, that secular societies are just fine, that there is nothing to heal, that there is nothing to uncover. I mean, I'm like, you can't be that stupid, you bitch. You can't be that much of a detriment on the air that you would say something so stupid as that. What did we do? Yeah, why do we deserve that? I didn't say that at the time, but looking back on it, I'm infuriated. Why would this woman be allowed to be on the air at all? Well, there's a lot of women like that on the air, unfortunately, that claim to be even Christian, who say that, that we need to get back on track, and America's great and wonderful, and they're failing to see the global situation here. They're failing to see the social problems of Satanism in our society and what has become of our society because it's not just loosening the morals so people can kind of do their own thing and do what they want. That's not it. It's organized, structured ritual that ends up occurring. Everything becomes a sacrifice. Everything becomes a ritual unto the God of this world. And then the society that engages in that gets consumed. That goes up in smoke. So the seers and the prophets and the visionaries and all you people out there, how's it going sharing them visions? Getting a nice response, are you, at the Thanksgiving table? No, they're going to throw you out the door. That's why they can't tell the story that I've got. Because, you become, they have to write you off as some kind of fanatic. And they don't want to say bad things about you because then it would draw attention, you know what I mean? But they can't just ignore you because, see, then you have the thing like the society problem, with this movie that becomes a cult hit that people are studying and doing their little, they're studying it like it's some, it was a secret genius thing, That's how kids are, you know what I mean? They discover the genius of schlocky horror, and then they append the genius label to the people that were making production mistakes of yesterday become genius level today. The reason they had to rubberize that, we never wrote a rubbery story, but the reason they had to rubberize it and put all kinds of little gags in there, a la, schlocky horror, is because they had to deflect from the real meaning of the script. the funny thing is, then I've got this guy actually, being my handler, and he's trying to handle the truth situation, keep things suppressed while doing a movie about the very thing that he's trying to handle. He's trying to control. So he flips out. He makes a mistake. He goes, public with a re-release in the year 2000, 2001 of Society, and then he slams me on there. Never slammed me before, but then he completely trashes me. Now, that's all fine and well until you add up the actual facts that, again, I was hired by him again to do several other projects after that. So if I was so terrible during Society, then why would I be hired again? And when you ask that question, then all of a sudden, you hit the jackpot and all the money starts flowing out of the slot machine and you can't even believe how much money there is there because it's all the marbles. So then you realize you can't tell that story, so you just want it all to go away. Right? Because you can't do all the marbles because then you become a problem, yes? So it's hot potato, hot potato, hot potato. And so long as it's hot potato, we going down. And that's what leads me to the next thing. So we are crashing. So the world is coming apart at the seams everywhere. We looked at the political thing, and I was right? I had the story of the century. It all started revolving around, the Lord choosing the Donald of all people to unravel the whole society, and it's just all collapsed. You had the Romney exposing and selling himself, corrupting himself publicly. You had, Rubio, and you had Glenn Beck completely showing the world what he's made of and what he's all about. And you had, the state of Utah and the Colorado delegates of showing what kind of pieces of shit they really are. You have all of this. They're totalitarians, right? They don't want people to vote. They want their way, and they're elitists. They're pigs. Oink oink. And so then you've got Ted Cruz, who's just now calling the Donald the Mafia Don Corleone or Michael Corleone, and I'm just like, I'm like, are you seeing this? Are you watching this? Because what you're seeing is the entire world coming apart right now. While this is going on, and we're having so much fun watching this political theater, and it's stuff we've never seen before. The economy is about to go off the cliff globally, and we're about to enter into World War III, and it's all just happening at once. It's the consuming of the Tower of Babel. Don't you see? It's this payback. It's this price that we must pay now for the corruption that doesn't exist. Because Barbara Simpson said, why are they attacking us? The answer, of course, is we've got some soul searching to do with, understanding this attack and understanding who we are as a society, what's going on, especially when you get into the fact that we attacked ourselves. When you get into the fact that, when ISIS goes against American troops, we are basically fighting ourselves. We're attacking ourselves. We're fighting ourselves. We're fighting ourselves in the streets. And our society is about to be completely consumed in violence and complete devastation that will never be recovered from, not in your lifetime, if ever, again. The complete collapse of not just Western civilization, but all civilization everywhere. Unlike the world has ever seen. It sounds like the Great Tribulation, doesn't it? Well, that's what it is. We are, either, I don't know what your timing is, but to me it seems like this is what we're seeing with the political, which becomes a bit of an allegory for the rest of the world, right? It becomes like an example of what's going on everywhere, on every level and everything. Science, CERN's apparently destroying the universe. Whatever level, chemtrails, vaccines. It doesn't matter where you look. It's all coming out. And every one of these stories is the kind of story like my story. It's a story that says stop everything because it's that story, that one story will consume everything. So these arcane little stories we want to tell each other about, rubbery Hollywood in the 1980s and what geniuses they were back then. Or stories about, Justin Bieber, or stories about, the whatever happened to the hula hoop and things like that. It's like you're telling that story while the tsunami wave is right on, just hanging above you. It makes it kind of hard to do that hula hoop story when you're about to be dead, right? When you're about to be consumed by it, right? When the herd of elephants is ready and are at the side of the village and they're stampeding, and you want to take a moment out to do a hula hoop story, right? It's kind of hard to do those stories, isn't it? With this other thing consuming everything in the room, right? The reason Donald Trump takes up all the oxygen in the room is because he represents the past, in a sense, that past glory that we had once and lost, versus the crushing New World Order, the crushing chaos that will consume every single human and destroy everything. He's that one last hope. And that makes him the biggest story in the room. I don't see Ted Cruz being the hope of anything. He just basically gives head to Neil Bush. That's his job. Probably likes that too. That makes him feel part of the club. Let's face it, that's what he is. I mean, people thought, he's a renegade. It's like he's always been there. Harvard Law, he did the whole thing of he worked as a lawyer on getting Bush W elected, getting that thing set aside so Al Gore didn't get her. You remember that, don't you? And he's been there the whole time, in the system, in the club, in the high society, in the power circles of what's wrong with this world. And we've covered a lot here today, and in a very short period of time and very efficiently, which is unusual for me because usually I go on and then something happens. But in our society, we expect to get quick results, right? We want to have it. This is called slam because this is a big slam. This pod. I mean, this is. Don't look for it to go. I wouldn't look for it to go viral anytime soon, but you watch for it to persist, because everything I do, it seems, it keeps persisting. It doesn't die. It just doesn't die. It's just going to have its day, and but on that day, I don't know if I'd even want to be around. I told my friend here, who also works for me, but he's my friend, and I told him, I said to him, the whole problem with the world is really how we treat the children. I mean, that's where it all begins. And then, of course, that we don't revere God anymore. We don't revere the basic morals and tenets of, and principles that we say we believe in, but we don't honor that when it comes to the children, to institutions. We kick the can down the road, allowing the corruption. And we feel that if we change the laws to make it okay for some of this stuff that's kind of, well, how can they bring it out? Because it's really satanic ritual rather than just abuse. But how can they actually, well, I guess that's what they want to do, right? Ultimately, is bring that out in the public, which then would be the end of all things, of course, which would be the end of them. Well, actually, they would be committing suicide, but you can't tell them that because they're so arrogant. They think they know everything. So we just sit here being victims of their idiocy. I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to. And it's really unfortunate because right now we're kind of past the point of no return. So, I almost think, if we die and our children die, maybe that would actually be, humane in a way. When you consider how bad things could get, and Jesus says, those days are going to be shortened. Unless those days are shortened, there'd be no one saved. So maybe this thing comes to an end before everyone is consumed by it. But make no mistake, we're in those days of Noah, and I think we're getting, even people that have been false in the past, you know what I mean, and been kind of like had prophecies that didn't work out and whatnot. I think even they are being brought into alignment now. And certainly the times of tribulation are far, the kinds that are unprecedented today. And, my contribution is, I believe that my story in my journey, tells the story in a sense. And I'm not the only one. I mean, you have other survivors. You have Judy. You've got all kinds of people that I know that have been through, similar horrors. And but it tells the story not of, in Judy's case, it involved Hollywood celebrities, Oral Roberts. I mean, what more do you want? That's our society. You're dealing with society-wide. Funny, I had an old friend, not a schoolmate, but a friend when we were teenagers, and I was all messed up on drugs and everything back then, and really messed. It was back in those days with a classroom and all that. But he, I see him later in life. He was the, and I wonder, he claims to become a Christian, and he's a famous person, and we used to talk about our grandfathers. So he's a famous person, and I'll just tell the story. So he's the grandson of Armand Hammer. Armand Hammer is his grandfather. The two of them are very close, just like me and my grandfather were close. And Armand Hammer and my grandfather, they know each other too. So we talk about that occasionally when we were kids. And then I, kind of from a distance, because he's a public figure, you see this guy. Michael is his name. And his son is a famous actor, Armie Hammer. He played with Johnny Depp in The Lone Ranger, But anyway, he's a guy that like I say, we were kids. And so the Armand Hammer is a big deal, right? There's always, that's a big philanthropist. And he was telling a story. I saw a video of him dedicating a building to Oral Roberts University. And then thinking about Judy and Oral Roberts and then this. And they were talking about it. He was telling a testimony about how his grandfather came to the Lord. I thought that was really great. I was like, wow, cool. Well, why don't we just have a reunion then? And it's great that you came to the Lord, Michael. Love it. I'll just tell you that publicly. Love it. Love that you came to the Lord. And it was his ex-wife that brought him to the Lord. I guess she was from the Midwest or something. The story is sketchy in my mind because I've only just perused it. But, that his ex-wife brought him to the Lord, and then that he's been ever since there. And he's been living in California and whatever. He's got family and he's got kids and, and he runs the foundation that he's very he's a philanthropist. He runs the foundation that gives grants and money and things to people of worthy causes. So he's a force of good, but he's an obvious and then they have galas at the Armand Hammer Museum in L.A. and all kinds of people there, and he's a celebrity guy. He's big time. And anyway, I see him on the stage at Oral Roberts University, and he's giving a speech about his grandfather and about how they would talk about the Lord. And I thought that was so sweet. I wanted to call him up and say, "Hey, old," and then I realized I couldn't. You see that wall between us, that line, we could never. That's permanent. And so I walked away from the story, but I was, amazed. I'm like, hey, I wonder if I should tell Michael, this is how stupid I am and how naive I can be. I wonder if I should tell him about, Judy's thing and send him that podcast. And you know what happened. Of course, he's probably aware of me as well. I mean, maybe, just hoping I would just stay on the sidelines and be, ephemeral and, not have any impact. Just hope that this thing doesn't come to, because it would be the end of everything, wouldn't it? It'd be the end of the whole civilization. If we ever, and see, that is the thing about Donald Trump. You see, he represents the end of civilization too, coming from another angle. But what I meant with Michael is that if the two of us could bridge the gap of Christianity and is there corruption there? I mean, do you go along, if this is true, if Judy wasn't lying, and her testimony is pretty horrific, what do you have to say about Oral Roberts University now that you've dedicated a whole building in the name of your grandfather, Armand Hammer? What do you have to say about this other testimony from a very serious Christian woman? I mean, who's had a real hard time? Well, the answer is obvious. We can't go there. And I realized I could never make that call because I know what would happen, and that's not God's timing, and it's something the Lord would have to do, and it would represent a great healing potentially, but it represent the end of our civilization completely. Then in comes Trump. He's the end of civilization over there. You can hate Trump all you want, but to fail to see how the Lord's using Trump is a big failure in spiritual discernment. To fail to see how that was the central story and still is today, and it's not because of him, but it's what he represents and what's happening to the unraveling of everything because of him is a work of the Lord, who is and we are being consumed by it. I don't care about the politics so much. The thing I'm trying to talk about is this. At some point, we're going to pay the piper on this stuff, right? At some point, Judy's testimony about Oral Roberts and the abuse she got there, which was ritual abuse, at some point that, becomes that, and the walk in Christ that you see on TV are going to have to be reconciled. It's just like I think I got banned from this Roma Downey's Twitter because all I said to her was, hey, nice money, or something about doing the Jesus movies. It's very profitable. And it was kind of I said it in a very sarcastic manner. So probably I'm not there. I haven't seen her since. So I guess any criticism of her commercial of anything, I guess, gets you banned. So that's what happened there. But yeah, they represent the surface. Can we have them talk to anybody that's been abused in these ways? What do they have to say about this sort of thing? And the answer is you get banned if you bring it up. So they want to keep the status quo going because it's very profitable for them. They're doing it all in Jesus' name, keeping the corruption going by making their movies and by not addressing the issue. They should do horror movies about what's really going on. But they will never do that because it would represent the end of Christianity, is why. We can keep on naming examples, just like me and my childhood friend Michael Hammer, just like we knew each other briefly. We were more acquaintances, we weren't really super tight friends because, they were all in the society and I was like the outcast, So, they would put up with me, but they couldn't really, be with me because I was a problem. Well, I'm glad I could say something about it because it was really weird. I'd go to La Jolla, of all places. I'd go there to the family house, a complete basket case. And then one time I saw him walking with his surfboard up the, just casually getting into his car. He went to school down there, I guess, and he was in La Jolla. All these traumatic experiences. Trish and I drove through La Jolla about when we were on our RV trip. We were staying up in the mountains of San Diego County, but we did manage. I took some pictures of that area of La Jolla Shores. Yeah, they're on my iPhone. I will post them. And one of the La Jolla Shores, where my brother used to stay, he'd go down there when my mom didn't want him to go to the house, so he would go down there and stay at the La Jolla Shores. I guess it's like a little resort thing there, right next to the beach and tennis club. But it's almost like in my life there's a matrix, and the nexus point of that matrix is La Jolla. There's this, you see people there from all over the world that you would never. The whole world kind of collides there, or had in the past. There's some conscious. Remember the Romney thing and Ann and Mitt and or that little restaurant that I was talking about that had a little outdoor sitting area. It's still there. It's an Italian restaurant now, an Italian bistro. And then there's a little retail store, and then there's Jeff's Burgers, and then there's the wine store my dad liked to go to, and then at the corner there was Surf Systems, a surf shop that's been there forever, and just it looked pretty much the same. It's just really crowded with people now, completely slammed, with people. And I did manage to take a couple of. I mean, it's not going to mean anything, but it's just interesting how. How this now this Michael Hammer being there and this Romney, having had a house there, and I just remembered him having a house there and it's at the shores. It's back. It's not like where my parents' house was, which is on the beach, which is on the Green Wall, that was a fantastic location. It's back a street or two, but he wanted to put in a basement parking. Because these houses are small, so that people buy them, they want to build them up. But sometimes people buy two lots. I think that's what happened to them. They buy two lots and try to put one big house there. Because originally the Shores was just little tiny houses, right? Little 2-3 bedroom houses stuffed in there. So now, but that's a real moneyed place now. So people want to, and he wanted to gut the house, level it completely, destroy, take it away. Start over and build a basement parking with an elevator that takes cars down the elevator, and so you can park them underneath, because there's no parking on the street anywhere. Everyone's jammed in those streets. Everyone's parking on the street to go to the beach. So if you live there, you have a house there, and you can't fit in the driveway, you're going to have a hard time finding parking on the street. So he wanted to put an elevator in. But that's understandable there because of the parking situation. And so I understood that, and I remembered that. So that's why I had this sort of fugue of having club soda with Mitt. And club soda sounds good with dinner. I think I'm going to try that. A little club soda, and girls are having their what do they have? Their Pinot Grigio or whatever. And that was right too, because that restaurant there that I envisioned has a little outdoor seating, but it is a little Italian bistro right in that neighborhood. It still has a neighborhood feel to it. And, people would walk on the beach. Like I remember I saw, you see celebrities on that beach walking along, and you see, you see famous actors walking along there, and you see, from the living room that my parents had, there were two chairs that were right at the window. So you could just sit in those very comfortable chairs and watch people walk by. And you'd see, right? And they had some telescope or some binoculars. And so if you really wanted to tune in, you could. But you could just watch all humanity. Well, my mother used to love to sit there and just watch people walk by. So anyway, it brought back. No, it also had. There's horrific memories there too, and I'm not feeling comfortable in sharing any of those right now today. But it's like everything was kind of a horror movie. When you look back on it, and it all has to do with the horror movie today, which is again this covered up reality that is ruining the surface reality. And if it isn't dealt with, there will be no surface reality to talk about. My contribution has been to warn people about this so that they could repent or not. It's up to them, But to say that this will happen if you don't do something, that our society was not acceptable after World War II, like it was wonderful, and then, all of a sudden the 60s came along. No, that is not the case. The same thing has been bubbling under the surface the whole time, since the the early beginning. And eventually it, like all cancers, it metastasizes and it takes over, and then that's the end of the patient. And, the society that preys upon its children will be the society that is no longer in existence. It's so bizarre the lengths we will go to cover up the truth. It's so strange that we will go to the point of ruining people's lives in order to keep the lie going, in the name of goodness, in the name of America, in the name of honesty and integrity. We will trash the people of the truth and lift up the people of the lie, as you see in politics. It's amazing watching the Ted Cruz meltdown. I want to turn to this subject a little bit, before we close. It's amazing watching the Ted Cruz meltdown. It's amazing watching the obsession with Donald Trump. I'm beginning to think Ted Cruz is psycho and dangerous. I mean, dangerous for himself. I don't know about danger to other people, but I certainly see him at this point being of great danger to himself. I see that same psycho pathology as I saw in Glenn Beck. Now it's almost like it's a disease. It's now hitting Ted Cruz, and it's coming. He's like Humphrey Bogart in the Caine Mutiny. With the steel balls. You know that movie? Interesting. The guy that wrote that movie made reference to my uncle, whose name was Bill Keith. Called him Willie Keith as a character in the movie, because he was famous in L.A. because he had gotten killed at Guadalcanal, and my grandfather was famous, so it was like his son lost his son, and that was a big deal. And the author Herman Walk that wrote the Caine Mutiny put that character based on my uncle. Not based on him exactly, because he was but he was a famous casualty of war, and he used that name in the book, having written it about that same time. Well, I found that interesting. But anyway, the steel balls, the strawberries, the conspiracy that Donald Trump is Michael Corleone, and he just keeps talking about Trump and talking about him and talking about him. And he doesn't, and if he puts forth any policies, they're imitative of what Trump's talked about. And it's starting to get sick, man. It's starting to get very sick. Am I the only one that noticed? Trish, are people noticing that? Yeah. He's starting to become publicly sick. And this is a mental illness. And I say this not wanting him to lose or win, or not in a political sense of I want to hurt the guy or anything. And, I want Trump to win, and because I don't know if Trump would be good. I'm just freaked out on this whole thing right now. I'm just looking at the unraveling of everything, and I'm looking how I just got to trust in the Lord, that I couldn't even do this show right now at the level of intensity it's gotten to without a complete foundation in the Lord. You realize that? There'd just be no way. You'd be scared to death, wouldn't you? Mentioning Michael Hammer and Judy regarding Oral Roberts in the same sentence. I mean, you would just freak out. I mean, there'd just be no way. Because you're talking about, pillars of our society here. You're talking about somebody who could pick up a phone call and you disappear. Talk about Michael Corleone. You know what I mean? And I don't want to, sully Michael. He did. I mean, what did he do? He gave a building. He came to the Lord. He believes in the Lord. He's in this surf, but, I don't see him contacting me. He knows who I am. If you're really a Christian, you'd be interested in my testimony. Wouldn't you, if you knew me from the past, from childhood, if our grandfathers were friends and famous and all that, wouldn't you? Of course you would. You're a brother. Yeah, we're brothers, aren't we? At long last, wouldn't this be a great day to have a cup of wine or something and have a hug and wouldn't this be all like whatever, however confusing it was, and he could then verify my testimony? He could say, yeah, I remember you back then. Wouldn't that be something? It'll never happen because his world would come apart. Mine wouldn't. Mine's already apart. I mean, there's nothing to put back together anymore. But wouldn't Humpty Dumpty fall apart? Wouldn't that start, the thread of unraveling of everything? Yes. The answer is yes. The whole world would have to stop and have to reset with a new paradigm. It's not going to happen. Just trust me on that. So I'm not going to be a fool here. I'm not going to try to make contact with anyone from my past because it's just, first of all, they're scared to death. Okay? I mean, obviously they don't want any on them. It's just the weirdest. See, had I been dead, we'd have no problem. Nothing to come back and bite you. But my very existence becomes a problem. You see, you start to understand the enormity of my own story. There is, you're starting to see my God's where he has me in this whole thing. And that should make you feel better because that, none of us are insignificant. They told me my whole life I was nothing and a piece of crap and everything. But they were doing that to shame me so that I would, disappear. Well, I am invisible. I mean, that's true. I don't have any ability to be a mover and shaker to alter the course of anything. I mean, I'm looking at this whole thing more like from a healing standpoint. I mention these things, as a not as any kind of being cruel or anything, and not wanting to upset anyone. What I'm trying to do is have a better society. Now, maybe something like that could happen, and privately we could talk and say, yeah, that I don't know, and we got to work against this corruption and all. Maybe that's because I got friends like that where we talk about what's wrong, and we don't go into it too much because everyone gets bummed out. So I've learned not to talk about, they leave my podcast alone. They don't hold that against me because I think they realize that, I'm helping people out there, and I'm not attacking anyone. Certainly not the people that I knew. I have nothing but love for them. I don't have any hatred for them, any of them. I don't care if they say hell Satan every day of their lives. I still don't hate them. I want to help them. I don't want to hate them at all. I'd rather love them than hate them. I like love better than hate. And I have fond memories of most people, and I have fond memories of people that I know even today who are at some level caught up in all this stuff, and that's fine for them. We're all at different levels, and I certainly don't expect people to have my circumstances because mine are very, very, it's very hard, very difficult, very unique in a sense, the circumstances, but, very traumatizing and very hard to survive circumstance, hard to survive at all. So my thing here is I better say it on the air, at least get it down so that it can be preserved, so somebody else might benefit from it down the road, maybe after I'm gone. But you can't go through what I went through as a survivor and then not say anything. I mean, if I did that, then I would just, I know that would have a deleterious effect on my health, for one thing. And I do care about my health, and it would be like a a life unrealized. Because what would be the purpose of going through what I went through unless it was to be realized, to be, a help? What good is it going through all this stuff, including the more recent stuff, the recent, getting online and having the Christian response? I mean, all that, and I survived that too, which was, tough as well. But at least now we're starting to get an understanding of it all, which you can't do with hate in your heart. You cannot understand this stuff if you have a personal grudge with somebody, which I certainly don't. I want the best for all people, including all my peers who spy on me all the time. Yes, I want the best for you. But please, don't have the attitude that if it's a problem, you just sweep it under the rug and then everything's okay. Because when you sweep stuff under the rug, including me under the rug, it's not okay. It's that because we tend to sweep stuff under the rug that we need to pay attention to because it's a bother. It's a problem we have to solve. You can't just ignore this stuff. Watch the society unravel. Watch you yourselves unravel. And then as a result of your silence, it just goes down, 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 down. I suppose that is an option, but to me that would be a life unrealized. If you had something to say and it never got said because it takes a lot of guts to say something. I admit that. But see, the alternative, kind of slipping by, going under the radar, trying to just kind of make it work out. That alternative it's tough that, you got to have somebody you can just, I talk about letting your hair down. I mean, let's look at this in the good con. Letting your hair down should be coming clean about, the stuff you've covered up, the stuff you need to deal with, the traumas you haven't dealt with, the real stuff. It'd be good if you have someone you can talk to about these things, so that you can finally be at peace with everything. I mean, we're all I've fraught with guilt of things I've done, but then I realized that the things I've done, a lot of them weren't my fault, which is a great thing to realize. It's the guilt and the shame and the trauma and the child abuse, frankly, that then shaped me or hardwired me in such a way that I was just miswired, and so that affected everything. And I would do things that are very self-destructive and, harmful and bad and whatever. But now I've come to peace with it because I realize, hey, that was not my fault. If something was done to me and it wired me a certain way, got me a certain result, I've been beating myself up ever since for something I'm responsible to control myself. Absolutely. It's my responsibility to overcome those things that happened and not make it a blight on other people in our society. Absolutely. It's it's some kids are thrown into a dumpster and that's their beginning, so they have to overcome it. I mean, I'm not saying that, you all behavior is excused because after all, since, everybody in prison has been abused pretty much, and they could just say, well, it's not my fault. You know what I mean? No, I don't mean that. But what I don't mean it in that ultimate way. I mean it more like realizing that it wasn't my fault. In other words, not my fundamental flaw. There's something done to me. It doesn't give, bad behavior an excuse, right? But it does take a certain pressure off. I still have to deal. I still need that healing. But it is a part of the healing to realize that the beating up of ourselves that we do because we don't like things in ourselves, some of that was shaped by others. And that was shaped by others needs to be put in that context so that we can let it go, so that we can deal with it dispassionately. In other words, yes, I have to control my flesh. Yes, if it's very easy for me to go down the road of becoming self-destructive and becoming, and somehow getting off on it, which is, I hate to put it that way, but it's just terrible. it's been something that has affected me even every day and still affects me. I still have to yeah, I'm still working on it. Something that I can't let run amok. I have to keep it under control. But I mean, it's there, and it's a thorn in my side that, you know, maybe I didn't put there. So I'm going to stop attacking myself for that. And just realize, okay, it's something like I got cancer, or I have a problem and I have to deal with it. I may not have given it to myself. I might have been exposed to radiation. But it's now I have to deal with it. Okay. So it doesn't get me off the hook at all. It's just that, you know, I have to then go out and warn people that, you know, if you hurt children, if you sexualize them and hardwire them to wanting, you know, humiliating, losing, hurting, you know, self-destruction, if that's what the cost of it that you've done, and you have that person in society, they wouldn't be necessarily a contributor. There'd be somebody who's having a problem and needs to be helped. And then there's no help for people in that category. They just you know, lock them up, or these are people that are never going to get help. And that's just one injustice. I mean, that's just one look at how abuse of children can then lead to the detriment of society by not having, you know, productive people, because they're consumed with their own, you know, and they're since we're not allowed to deal with any of these issues, it's always, you know, the psychologists and psychiatrists, people deal with it on almost a pharmacological basis, and never really understand the root cause is a societal problem that we as society must deal with. And since we don't deal with it, and since we're so busy pointing the finger of blame to somebody else, then we get to this level of chaos that we have today. And it all started by a simple hurting of someone, and justice was not done. And that festering wound becomes, in other words, the more of those that there are, the more that becomes a blight on society that ends up taking society down. The way to not have that problem, the way to have a burgeoning society, is to be more honest, obviously. But this idea of punishing a child for trying to heal, or killing a child, in other words, to not have, you know, their testimony about your bad deeds come out or something. This is what, you know, compounded, of course, this is what destroys. And it will destroy you, me, the churches, the schools, the businesses, everything that makes up our, you know, world will be destroyed if these things are not dealt with. Oh, that's cool. I mean, you could deal with the one thing and it leads to all the others. I mean, the one simple thing leads to everything else. So if you deal with one thing and try to correct that, then you realize it connects to all the other injustices. And there's no excuse for, you know, harming children. No excuse for if the U.S. is involved in some, you know, black ops or some ops here or there or somewhere in human trafficking of children. I mean, that is beyond the pale. Things like that need to be prosecuted. That's why Govinda and I are here every month to do 20 on 20 to end human slavery. And a lot of that goes to the children, to end human slavery by 2020. But who are we to do that when we kill our kids that are going to spill the beans about something that doesn't exist in the first place? I mean, that's really messed up when you're dealing when a sentence like I just said. That's superbly messed up. And the reason they can't deal with it, again, is because if they start to acknowledge that it exists, the society collapses. So the very thing they're trying to do in healing can't be done because of a line has been crossed. That line is to admit that Satan exists. That's right. And, and that all of this stuff, I mean, that makes our society and a lot of people in it abusers. People that have gotten away with criminality, who are seen as pillars of our society. You start, going around the edges of that, and pretty soon you start bringing people down. I don't see it because the problem is it's so huge. It's so worldwide. It's so supernatural. It's just like my experience at school. How, one day it's on and there's this whole hive thing, this whole ritual thing going on. The next day it never happened, and nobody has a memory of it, or at least they're not admitting it. This is beyond belief. This just that one incident is beyond belief. What it portends about our society is beyond comprehension. And if we live in a world that is beyond comprehension, we should let each other know that. We should admit that exists, that beyond comprehension thing. We should try. See, my whole point in being here right now today is to make our world a better place by, healing these things that are killing us. The healing comes from the Lord. The Lord will, but you have to say something exists before you can, right? And then, then you can heal it. But you can't, why do you think the internet is so fraught with false prophecies, tons of conspiracies? Why do you think it's so fraught with all this eye candy? So we don't deal with this. That's why. So it's another Tower of Babel of confusion. So we never get down to what's going on. So we never get, it's always out there somewhere, some big thing, it's CERN, it's this big super collider, and you don't pay attention to what's going on in the back bedroom there, down the corner there, down at the hall, down at the over in the PTA meeting. It's, that's all mundane. You don't look at that. You're looking at CERN because they're going to blow up the universe, or or whatever. Right. So that again, it all becomes a distraction. So we don't deal with what's going on ever. We don't talk to each other. We don't know what's going on. So how can we deal with what's going on? Can you honestly sit down with somebody over a coffee and say, today is pretty heavy. Spiritual warfare is really just, getting me. I know this is because I'm about to do something, and I've got memories happening about things that were done to me, and I've got to confront the people that did it, and I'm just freaked out, and then I have all these thoughts to destroy myself, and I just can't quite. It's really tough. Even the best psychiatrists in the world, if you said that, would say, well, maybe you need some help. You know what I mean? But to shoulder that on your own, to have a day like that on your own with no help, and then to go day after day after day like that, trying to figure it out with no help. Well, there's help. The Lord, obviously. The Lord makes it work out. But, to handle that sort of thing, to realize that you risk being called a pariah, a crazy person, in order to then shame you into shutting up, into silence, or making it so that others in society will never listen because you're crazy. To risk that, most people will just swallow down their testimony, forget about healing, and just try their best to muddle through living a triple, quadruple level layers of reality. You know what I mean? It did happen. It didn't happen. Maybe over here, that a lot of times I see people, they'll hear a surface Christian message, approved of, like the Christian movie people, they'll hear that and they'll go, oh, hey, brother, only to get a cold shoulder, right? That's that then alludes to the same problem I'm talking about, doesn't it? That cold shoulder wouldn't happen in a real world, but that cold shoulder would happen in a satanic society where the people, though they're making these Christian movies and though they're going to their local church and saying praise Jesus all day long, are themselves, in essence, fomenting and creating a duopoly, a kind of a dual double standard, if you will. And in a sense, they are in the grip of the Dark Lord, of Satan, sustaining our society, not doing a damn thing about it other than doing Jesus movies. And the very thing that they're seeking is the very thing they're opposing. It's a very confused conundrum. But if they were to be any more honest about things, I mean, obviously, they would run from someone like me like the plague. But if they were to be more honest about things, they wouldn't be able to live where they live or do what they do. So this idea of the end justifying the means, that they would do these things because, we're doing it for Jesus. Doesn't matter how we get there. Doesn't matter how we set up our social structure. Doesn't matter how we behave. We're doing something good for Jesus. And we have to work within the system, because Jesus wants that. Jesus most certainly does not want that. He already said, only corrupt fruit comes from a corrupt tree, yes? I rest my case. That's all I need is that one little bit of scripture. That's it. I just, the whole, it's an epic fail, all the rest of it. You do not do things for Jesus where the ends justify the means. The Lord will do that. Take bad actors and bad things happening in our world, and then making it good for those who love him, turning what meant to be a curse into something positive, like with me. He's turned what was all meant for curses. I mean, obviously, we had generational curses. We have all kinds of bad vibes and, people that won't talk to me because of, I love them, they hate me, whatever. Just terrible, terrible stuff. But the Lord somehow is taking that, all those experiences, and then using them in a way to communicate like a healing message to other people, even though these things were intended as harm. So for those who are attentive to the Lord, who belong to the Lord, and love him and are called according to his purpose, they are being blessed by these words and even entertained. Now, I'm sorry for the expletives today. Somehow I just say them, I think, to differentiate myself from Christians because they don't say things like that. And I guess I'm, still have anger issues to work out, Well, I'm just now dealing with stuff that just happened, a couple, 3, 4 years ago. And it's been a really strange ride. I mean, you've got people setting up conferences, and it's so they can get you, and, there must be one hell of a party going on over there on that dark side. They do it in Jesus' name, your initiation. I mean, why bother with me? I'm just an old crazy man, wild man, wild and crazy. But why bother with me? It's not like I'm youth. What does it matter anymore? I don't think it does now, but I mean, a few years ago, maybe it still did. I don't know. But why go through that trouble? Why not just say, look, we're in this, we say we're Christian, but we're really this. And the answer is because they would then become social pariahs, outcasts. Well, they claim to be, but I mean, they would then be, why would you go through that kind of trouble? Because, the world waits for you to join them. And it's like, I am the world. I mean, I am the Lord. It belonged to him. That's my world. And that's where I go. But see, they never stop. They don't seem to understand that this thing is detestable unto the Lord. It's just, look, a lot of things I do are detestable unto the Lord too. I have to really keep working at that. Not condoning it, not initiating people into it, not getting other people to act like me, but rather, keep working against that which I know is wrong. And that's the same thing with any kind of initiation into the circles of shame in man's secret, shameful, subterranean world. I mean, we can't go there if we belong to Yeshua, the One, the Lord, the Creator. We can't go there, or we would break that bond would be broken. But now that's where it gets interesting. Because you see, the idea, and then once you're in there, of course, then look what they do to these guys. I mean, they were Christian, now they're like UFOs and conspiracies. They just keep moving them around, and they're just lost. So no, I'm not angry at them, really. I feel sorry for them. It must be a terrible, terrible thing to have lost your faith, to have lost your way. But again, you can't just start initiating people into sub-cults of satanic acceptance and consent, and then expect that the Lord's going to bless you. That would just be an oxymoron. That makes no sense. But here's the way the game works. You convince people that conformity to society isn't anti-Christ. Right? You consider them, they work together. In other words, the Lord knows we have to be in the world, and the Lord's working with us in the world. They're claiming that we're too weak to fight off the world system, so therefore the Lord understands. So, look, I understand. It's a conundrum. I'm going to play me a song here. I don't know. Let me get Trisha's song up here.
Conspire, and the kings plot in vain. The kings of the earth rise up, and the rulers band together against the Lord and against His anointed. The one in heaven, He laughs at them. The Lord scoffs at them, rebukes them in His anger, and terrifies them in His wrath. Oh yeah, oh yeah. I will make the nations your inheritance, the ends of the earth your possession. Break them with a rod of iron, dash them to pieces like pottery. Therefore, kings, be wise, be warned, ye rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear, celebrate His rule with trembling. The one in heaven, He laughs at them. The Lord scoffs at them, rebukes them in His anger, and terrifies them in His wrath. I have set my king on my holy Your way will lead to your destruction. His wrath can flare up in a moment. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. Why do the nations conspire and the kings plot in vain? The kings of the earth rise up and the rulers band together against the Lord and against his anointed. One in heaven, he laughs at them. Lord scoffs at them, rebukes them in his anger, and terrifies them in his wrath.
You can stay in your delusion. You can stay in your crib. You can stay in your feedback. You can stay beyond your welcome. Find the alligator. Go out front with the machine gun. Tell everyone how nice they are. I don't know you, not anymore. When I asked you, everything was fine. When I asked you, all was divine.
Irrational repetition.
You're deluded. You're deluded. I would like to know. I'd like to know.
Okay, well, I'm not just going to leave you like that. Yes, I am still continuing. As long as there's breath in me, I will continue. The only solution to this, I mean, based on what I've said, it's overwhelming. So I say, okay, because of me, let's go to the Lord. Because there's no way that I can solve it or you can solve it. Let's go to the Lord and see what he has us do. So I'm just going to go to the Lord like always. And, I know he wanted me to do what I did today, whatever it was. But my only solution here is the Lord. Obviously, it's too complex for me to handle. The Lord can solve it without there being a complete destruction of everything, if people are willing. But they're so superstitious, and then they have power, and then we get afraid of that superstition, and we don't want to upset them, and so we try to kind of slink along the corners and stay out in the shadows and stay out of their way, and the whole thing becomes a non-life. We become, our whole life is walking on eggshells then. And then if you don't walk on eggshells, then you're considered crazy. Look at the mess you're making by not having the right social graces, or not realizing there's some things you just don't talk about. And I'm like, well, no, it's not true, because see, the things I'm talking about are necessary for me to be able to heal, or to get on the right track, because I got, more healing I have to do. So I can't afford to just let stuff be under the rug, because when I do that, then I stay, damaged. And the Lord didn't make me to be a damaged. He made me to solve it. And then to help others solve it by being having a broadcast. And and the music is another mysterious thing. It's like that also causes people to go insane. I don't know why they get so angry with it. I mean, I know it's good, and that's probably one of the big problems. It's not just like amateur hour, but some of it is. But I mean, most of it's not. And to their it's the old thing of like, you're having a great day and you're laughing and enjoying yourself, and then it drives them into a rage. It's not. Who told you were a musician? You're not supposed to do that, and it's not supposed to sound good like that. Come on now. You can't. Not anyone can just go do that. And it's like, well, yeah, they can. If they're led to do it, we don't need your permission. And you're happy with it. You get. It's very obscure out there, but you're happy with that. I'm very happy with that. Very, very happy with it. I'm very happy when I make music, like birds singing and chirping and stuff. I like that, and I like working with people. And I want to talk a little bit about, for you musicians, we have a lot of you listening in, which you wouldn't do if I wasn't proficient in what I do, right? Musically. You wouldn't even be there. So, what's happening, baby? Right? The Lord's using that. You wouldn't even be there. You're curious. It makes you. There's a curiosity. Well, maybe that curiosity was the thing that brought you in here, and maybe what you're going to get out of it is going to be nothing less than your own healing. And then if you're healed, then you're going to be a benefit to your children and a benefit to the world. I mean, enough with the nihilism already, right? The nihilists already got their way. Okay, good job. But, eventually after having, a banana split for dessert every day, for lunch, dinner, and breakfast, eventually you get tired of it. You got your banana split. You got your nihilism. Okay, more and more musicians are becoming obscure. And they're in a lot of pain because they feel like they're being ignored, right? You're being ignored out there. You used to get more plays. Now you don't get as many. And as we become more of a streaming society, as things, you're not getting 300,000 views on YouTube, or like Adele. I saw an Adele track. I think it was Hello. It had like 6.5, 7, 10 million. I don't even know, 100 million views or something, right? And, and heck, you're almost as good as that, or maybe you are as good as her. But look, it's, I want to talk about this because I see people, they get upset, they get upset, and, we tend not to, once you start with that spirit down that road of feeling rejected, and people don't care about you, and don't they see that you're a great musician, a great artist, and you've based your your thing on, feedback on, I don't know, like whatever social network. I'm going to expand to another one too. I'm going to expand into, let's see if I can get our stuff into Spotify. I like just having lots of different things, and I don't even know how I got through this, because most people now would say that there was hurt before that I experienced, and it was very deep pain from say when I was selling MP3s, and I was doing pretty well with that, and that was funding the Zeph Report at one time, plus being bumper music. And that time I used to do mainly instrumental music, no vocals, no, just instrumentals are easier to produce because the human voice is just, making room for that and everything else balanced. It's an extra challenge, not insurmountable challenge, but I mean, it takes a certain kind of skill. But anyway, well, you can just do it, the way I did it in the beginning, which I used no skill at all. I just I didn't mix. I just put all the sounds on the tracks and then said that's a wrap. But the instrumental music would sell, and it would be played around the world, from Israel, New Zealand, Australia, all over Europe, all over the place. And some tracks would bring in like, several $1,000s, I'll just put it that way, per track. That was good times back there. Frankie will remember that time I used to put those tracks on the Zeph Report page that Frankie had on his server, and and people would buy the MP3, because back then you'd have to buy the MP3, and if you get several thousand people to buy an MP3, that's several $1,000s, right? And they download them. You don't have streaming back then necessarily. And if DJs want to use your material, back then it was a time when DJs were not as proficient as music as they are today, and they were getting there. But they like to take your song and then remix it or use it along with another song and play them together, and, whatever they do in the clubs. So, my music was just perfect because it had a lot of danceable beats and things. And so it was, it was great for them, and they used it. And also it was used on lots of people's podcasts used my music, because I had, it was called Pod Free or something, where you put your music there, and then the producers of podcasts would go peruse music. They'd always choose me. I had I'll play some of the songs. You know what I mean? I've got a whole cache of hundreds and thousands of songs that I produced back then. And a lot of them are pretty good. They're instrumentals and, whatever. They may not be as good as I could produce now. But the point I'm trying to make is, I was getting a lot of attention right off the bat. I mean, this is like a year after I started producing, because before I was a drummer, then I went into producing. And because I needed bumper music for the Zeph Report. That's how it all started, because we couldn't use copyrighted music. And Frankie, read us the law and made sure we understood that you just can't, and we probably could have gotten away with it looking back on it, but, I was motivated to try to do my own music so that I would have bumper music. Anyway, and it turned into this side thing of like, God gave me music back, and I started just flourishing in it. I took to it like, a fish to water. I just went with it. You know what I mean? I was just so stoked that my first track, and then I made another track, and then before, and it's just something I do now. Tracks are not hard for me to make, to build. You have to have patience, but it's something I just do. It's by this time, after this many years, it's very kind of, it's something that calms me down. It's just like, I go ahead and do a track, but back then it was so exciting. It was so just, I can't believe I did that. I would do all these abstract, kind of cinematic tracks, which I love the best, because I was able to really explore, really be creative, really let my soul free, And there was an audience for that. And I got lots of strokes back then, and lots of people that were saying that they thought I was great. And, MySpace was happening. Remember MySpace back then? I know I'm talking to somebody here. And then they all said I was great. And, I was interacting with, like pretty famous people like Bill Laswell and other people that worked with him, that were like, we'd listen to each other's tracks, and I'm talking to them, they're talking to me like I'm a peer, So I was right in that vein, that mode. I mean, I was riding high. First 3 years of my producing, it was a big hit. And then Yes, you know what I'm going to say, don't you? Already before I say it. What happened? Well, for the independent musician, there was a pocket there of, I don't know, a couple, 3 years that was phenomenal. Phenomenal. You know, we were becoming famous, too, because we were interacting with famous people. It was all, you know, it was all, you could, it was something, there was a movement. I mean, you know, if you want to take it further in the fame department, you have to move to in New York or LA or become a DJ or something. But they did pretty well, DJs, right? So I didn't take it to that level. I wanted to be a composer, you know, and I was trying to get into film composition. I actually had people prior to that using my sonic creations, and you know, I love to do that. I love to do sound design, right? I'm a sound guy. I love sound. I like to create a story with the sound. And, you know, so they were using these soundscapes I was doing that were very abstract and very bizarre and very just almost impossible. They were using those in with my permission, of course, in movies, you know, like horror movies and stuff. That they were download. They were following me. They're actually listening, and then they hear a podcast back in 2002, right? And that was my first production. So I guess if you go from 2002 to now, we're talking. And I was producing podcast too, so that'd be 2002. So that would be 2012. So that'd be 10 years, 11, 12, 13 years, 14 years. Sheesh. 14 years of this producing of sound and music. But it was a little bit later than that I got into, you know, actually producing tracks, you know, that way. But I was producing soundscape tracks before that, which also were used in movies. I can't tell you which ones because, you know, they're just obscure horror films and stuff, things on TV. I didn't even ask them where they were cued in. They were part of the sound design of those movies. At least that's what they told me. You know, I mean, they might have just said they might have used it as a temporary thing and then used something else later. I didn't follow up on it. I was just like, yeah, if you want to use it, brother, go ahead. You go ahead and download it. I mean, I'm just amazed that I was using SoundForge back then. I was creating these amazing things with this. Sony has a chorus generator that. There's this one setting that it just goes this up down thing. It was just I loved it. Okay, I just loved. In fact, I'll do some more of that for you, and you'll see what I mean. You know, for some of you, it will be unlistenable too, and you will find it might make you want to throw up. So that's okay too. But just, you know, be warned. I'll put a warning on it that, you know, this might not be suitable for all listeners. But yeah, I mean, that was the thing. And then that kind of morphed into music, and then that morphed into kind of an early success. I mean, I had the bumper music. I was providing bumper music for other people's podcasts, other people's radio shows. I was plugged into the MP3 downloads, got a couple of reviews early on, and the records that I put out weren't very good. They were mastered horribly. You know, I didn't know what I was doing, you know. But when they weren't records, it was pretty good, you know. So anyway, all of a sudden, drum roll, please. All of a sudden, you know, the whole bottom dropped out of the MP3 market. Boom, gone. People were not paying for downloads. They were starting to stream them here and there. There was the birth of streaming was coming in. 2007-ish, I'm thinking. And so everything changed. So MySpace, people would put music on, right? And your music would go largely ignored. And you tried to like other people's stuff, and they'd come like yours and try to get something going. But it was like, you know, the same thing as like, say, a SoundCloud today, because SoundCloud didn't change when it should have with the streaming. So now it's going the way of MySpace. But you know, it started becoming more and more lost online. You start becoming more and more of a non-person as a musician in MySpace. Ironically, as MySpace is coming on, reaching its peak, musicians were already going down independent music. So then the only other way you could justify yourselves would have been to or justify ourselves would have been to join a live band again and then go live and then announce your shows use the social media for that. Reverb Nation was coming on then. Same thing as SoundClick. SoundClick was the original. People commenting on each other's tracks, and then there was a few other social media things out there where you go back and forth and it gets harder and harder and harder. But there's no commercial application for the music anymore. Back, 7 years ago. 8 years ago. So now all there is social media, how many likes you get. So people would be, selling likes and trying to, so maybe you could impress somebody, you're a big star. Of course, that's all a ruse. That people don't, A&R people don't look, record company people don't look for how many likes you have. They don't care. They'll go over YouTubes and they're looking for 16-year-olds that are like Justin Bieber. That's what they do all day. So that all went south. The rock and roll band became extinct. I mean, sure, you guys are still out there, but I mean, metal shrunk in terms of popularity. It's still there, but it's didn't grow anymore. These kind of rock bands, and of which metal is still part of the rock band scene. That all kind of went south, except for, again, live performance in your local clubs or your local theaters or whatever. But so the opportunities for it, I've been through this before when I was a player, back in the 70s. So all the opportunities dried up as disco, DJs took the helm and they started creating all their own tracks and started becoming famous as producers. And they had the money, they had the power, okay? And they kind of, are a closed club. They're just a few people that make, they make up to, some of them, $20 million a year. I mean, they make great money, these people. But then the rest of the music, it became relegated to, classic rock, right? The Indian casino circuit, right? Where you break, have your ZZ Tops and your famous old bands from the way gone era, guys who are still kicking. They would go play these nostalgia concerts, and that's where rock went, and that's where rock died as well. It's sad. Hey, I play rock. I don't care if it died or not. That's my era. I love it. I'm gonna keep playing it. But I mean, it's dead in terms of a commercial application. It's classic rock, and then you do have like your Foo Fighters and your some of the bands like that today, but they're just kind of like a reboot of something from the past. They're commercial music today. It's got to sound a certain thing, and the bands have to conform to that, and they do. Like the Foo Fighters is a great example of a band that conformed more and more and more and more. They started being more experimental, and then they became more mainstream. And they don't add anything. The rock is still dead, and they're not reviving it. These bands are conforming to something from the past. And there's plenty of people that... What was that other band? There's a few popular ones today. And they do a pretty good job. It's not their fault. Foo Fighters is a great band. It's Dave Grohl and company. And he learned to sing like Kurt Cobain, which I suppose that's his destiny, to be in Kurt's shadow. But whatever, I'm not going to be critical. You had Soundgarden before. They tried to revive it. You had the grunge thing in the 90s. They tried to revive it. But rock was still on its way down in the 90s. It was just on its way out. Now what it is nostalgia. So the rock bands today that make money being rock bands, they are, there's nothing new going on. And that's the way the industry is. It's not the band's fault necessarily. They're just trying to work. So, it's the DJ thing that's happening. That's what's hot. Okay? So the bottom dropped out on the MP3s. MySpace became a wasteland, as you know, right? I went down with MySpace. I was so depressed back then, begging people to listen to tracks. I used to throw them out there, and there were radio shows that just would play tracks of independent musicians, and they would mention me and then play my track. I mean, it was people I didn't even know. It was awesome. I was like, who needs the music industry? I'm making money. We're getting tracks out there. Things are growing, and then all of a sudden it just came to a screeching halt. You guys know what I mean. And then that became a really tough wasteland for people to try to get through that and try to work their way through that, try to keep their head above water, try to not be depressed, and still be true to themselves. In other words, don't just chuck everything for a DJ rig, right? And just kind of work with your MIDI keyboard in your studio at home, and then go out and try to get a gig, as a solo guy with a DJ thing happening. Because you guys were musicians and you're used to playing in a band. And, the opportunities are there in your bars, you're warming up for a national band or international band that's coming through. And, our nostalgia concerts, festivals. No money involved, of course, but that's what it's become. I saw that happen here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I saw it happen everywhere. So I took my how I survived MySpace. That was pretty tough. And then after that came the SoundClouds and the Reverb Nations, which I got off Reverb Nation because I just felt, I don't know, it's just grinding on me. It's the charts every week. Who's top number one in Santa Fe? It's like I met some guy in Santa Fe that said he was a musician, and I was a musician. Let's get together and have coffee. It was like apples and oranges. Got together and had coffee. Never spoke again. It was like, well, don't contact me then. A lot of these people are just down with our society the way it is, and they don't want it to change, and they don't care if it hurts children. They don't care anything about anything, just their own stupid, idiotic career. This guy was like mixing movies, and he was on his way up, and I'm like, I've been there, done that, dude. I first had my hands on Pro Tools in 1994. All right, and on a film that I had been working on, and so I was well aware of mixing and everything, but I didn't want to be the mixer back then. I'd hire people to do it. But it didn't matter. I still got my hands on it. I got to tweak and do, dialogue and music and effects the way I wanted to do them, and, whatever. But yeah, I've been around mixing in studios and all that stuff a long time. But I've never seen anything like the depression the independent musician has suffered the last few years. It's awful. There is no market for the independent musician. Okay, there is no market. There's no, they have these CD parties. I feel so sorry for them. I've had a couple CDs out there, and I tell you, I want to put a couple more albums out there just so I don't have these lousy albums out there, so I have a better mix, and I can show my skills if someone wants to go that way, or when it shows up on Google. And you put them out there so it will eventually wind up on Spotify, so it'll stream, and you can do that through CD Baby or whatever. I would do that just for personal pride, for vanity, just so I have something modern of today to put out. Maybe put 20 songs out in 2 albums and call that today, a DCP album and a, whatever. Put a Trish album out, got some stuff with Kelly and, whatever. To just make sure that on Google we have, people can go to these places and hear something besides what was around years ago. But anyway, be that as it may, there is no there's no money to be made there. And I was working with some other people that they put an album out, and they thought there was going to be a big tour and everything. There was no tour, nothing manifested, because the market dropped, the bottom dropped out of the market. So now independent artists have been reduced to hobby musicians that put their tracks on, say, SoundCloud or Reverb Nation or whatever, and they live for likes, which is a very desperate, awful ghetto, as what I've called. People got mad at me for calling it a ghetto. It is a cyber ghetto, these places. And, I mean, we still use it, but at least I call it what it is. It's a ghetto. What I mean by that is there is no mobility from that. You get your likes, and eventually, if you go up in likes, you feel good about yourself. And if you go down in likes, you feel bad about yourself. You put it on Facebook. Nobody is really people on Facebook looking for news articles. They're not looking to listen to music. YouTube, you get a couple of people there. You get a couple of people on. I don't interact with other people on SoundCloud because it just got too difficult for me. the delusion. When I wrote the song "Deluded," it was really kind of about SoundCloud. It's about how we all lie on each other's tracks, where we tell it gets this. This is how bad it gets. Here's how much of a cyber ghetto SoundCloud is. You wind up lying on each other's tracks, saying, "Oh, how much you enjoyed it." You know what I mean? So that they will then comment on yours, how much they enjoyed yours. And after a while, you realize you're just deluded and you're participating in a delusion. And, you're all losers, and it's a real sad thing, and there's no mobility for anyone. Everyone's in their, living room and they're in their underwear trying to make a track and desperately trying to be liked. And it's just so sad I can't watch. Some people like it. They say they're having fun. But, truth be told, for me, it's music is not fun. Okay, for me, music is more akin to war than fun. So I'd rather have no likes or not pay attention to. I don't want to pay attention to likes. I don't want to like somebody's. If you go and you be honest about, you say, well, production wise, you could do this, and right here that keychains. I'm not sure that's really working. Maybe try something else. If you did that kind of feedback, you'd be booted out. That's my point. So I was like, I don't want to lie anymore. I played that game. It made me feel bad about myself. And here's my theory. The people that are of the Lord, that are kind of doing that like thing and getting likes and being liked and, doing a like thing. I think it wears on your soul after a while, that are you living for the likes? Or are you doing the music because you want to do the music? Or do you need people to like it to validate that you did the music? If you need people to validate that you did the music, and that's why you're hanging around SoundCloud, that can be a very, very desperate life. Meanwhile, there's no mobility with your music, and you're not really able to you're not placing it places, you're not getting movies to buy it, there's so much of it out there, there's such a glut of music that nobody cares. And that's the state we're in today. I mean, it may be a very hard thing to come to realize, and I know that people, play footsie with each other and kind of like whistle by the graveyard while their music is dying, they're liking each other. You know what I mean? But the quality is going down, right? You're not putting as much into those tracks as you used to. You're not getting as much satisfaction out of people liking you. You're not growing into the thousands and thousands and thousands of likes, which basically you would have to do in order to feel justified at doing the music. And so my recommendation, I've been much happier since withdrawing from that thing. And, I play the music. I've gotten back to my original roots, which are writing music and then, producing it and playing it in with a radio show, which was the original. By the way, that was the original intent. That was the whole beginning of it. When I went down, I remember, to a Best Buy, and I picked up a copy of Sony Acid, music studio for students, really. It was for kids, $50. And I brought it home, and I was like making track. I couldn't believe it. I was just blown away. And the reason I did that is because Frankie was saying that we need to do our own bumper music. So I went ahead and I got a program. I didn't know what it was going to do. And then pretty soon we had bumper music. And that was the beginning. And it's so funny. It's come full circle. I'm using that again. I'm even considering doing, music shows with various artists and with their music, because I think it's fun to talk about the music and then play it and talk about real things, and then play music and have different things going with the music. I know it provides a good, sort of a buffer between things what we talk about. It's good to put on music, take a little break, and then come and talk about something else. But as for the musician today, the music scene is dead. Okay? Music online is dead. And it's more dead now. There's less likes going around because of the fact that, I think that realization is sinking in, and that there's a kind of an attrition going on where people are falling away from it. There's less likes. There's less interest. There's more abstraction. And it can be, again, you could easily become a victim of the cyber ghetto of, having lived your life for, did they really like, and then there's the other cognitive dissonance you have of, and that hurts your soul, which is, did they really listen and like it, or are they just saying that? And, well, do you really like what you're hearing, or are you just saying that so they'll like yours? Well, this is the soul searching comes in, because if that's what you're doing, then that's what they're doing. Then eventually you're going to have less and less satisfaction, and pretty soon you're going to get really depressed. What's the answer? The answer is always the same answer. It's you got to do something different. That's all. There'll be something different coming along. But meanwhile, do you need people to like? Kelly sent me a song today, and I listened to it. She sent it to me, and I listened to it very carefully. And which I admit nobody really does in the cyber ghettos of the world, because they just listen to like 2 seconds of it. They flip to like the middle to make a comment to make you think that you listen to it all the way through, or they'll just flip to the end of the song, listen to a few measures, and then write a nice note at the end. Like, I really enjoyed that. That's awesome work, which you could say on anything. And I got so tired of that with people lying about me that I just wanted to punch them out. Or I could do the more wise thing, which was just cut off the comments, cut off the interaction, and then just produce for the sake of producing. And if I get 25 plays, I'd rather have 25 plays for real and a couple of shares, whatever, than 15,000 plays where there's just nothing but insincerity the entire way through all the comments. Because most of the comments I got, for the exception of a couple of people, were pretty much showing me that they really didn't listen, and they really didn't care. And why should they care? It's just another guy. You're a guy. I'm a guy. Who cares? You know what I mean? Do we really care? And the answer is most of us don't really care. People don't really care about music. There's so much of it out there, so much sound going on out there. I mean, it's hard to say to an individual about caring. Now, when Kelly sent me her track, I listened in a way that probably nobody on SoundCloud listened. And I really enjoyed it. I really thought she did a good job. And her partner there that she's working with did a good job. And I told her so. But I told her after I listened thoroughly to the whole thing, which probably wouldn't happen if it was just a link. Although when I see her links, I usually, will play it. Or, and if I don't, it's because I'm just distracted with a million other things. Not on purpose. It's just that I'm working on getting my own music out there, which people are going to ignore. Now, okay, so here's the last part of this. And then, we really dug ourselves in here time-wise. The last part of this is, I don't care. I make the music so I can play it on the show. So it's as a to take a break, and we need music. Back to my origination. I also have people that like the music that are fans of it out there. I wish they wouldn't listen to it on YouTube or Spreaker. I mean, I do that. But it's in the context of the show and what I'm doing here, the podcast is also like doing a track. Okay, it's like I produce a podcast. I produce tracks. They go together. They work together on the show. They provide a certain thing for you out there. It does matter that you get good music, so I'm going to do my best. So when I'm going to play it for you, it's going to be my best. If I'm going to do a music show, which I will do, as soon as I can get it organized, because I have tracks all over the place. I can't even keep track of them myself. So it's hard for me to do a music show right now. I mean, I could do something like, because I don't want to just stream it, And then there's other people. I could do some of Kelly's music, and you might want to hear where she's coming from and how she got to write those songs. You see, even that right there is then there's real appreciation. That's why I'm thinking about reviving my music show, because then people really do listen, and you really do get into what what we're trying to do in cyberpunk space. Is we're trying to interact with each other, but really the radio show is the place to do it when you're talking about artists. And then you wonder, well, what made them want to do this song, and how they get the lyrics, and then we'll play the song, and it has good fidelity, right? So it's not like you have to go do post-production on it. You play it right there. Then you have the artist there that you're talking. So expect those kind of shows from me as another remedy for this situation. that I do like to play other people's music. I do like it very much, and I do enjoy learning about how they came to make the track, because I'm kind of a producer at heart. So a producer's always, always digging other people's stuff. But lately I haven't been, and I apologize to people that I know who me, and if I haven't tuned into you enough. We just need to find it. This method of doing it isn't really working for any of us, because I got plenty of tracks out there nobody pays attention to. My big metal voice, that I did in 2013, Karma Slam. I got a couple of friends who liked it, and these people really mean a lot to me, and they were telling me I sounded like a 20-year-old or something. What did you say, John? A 20-year-old? Of course I love that, but you really listened. I'd rather have just you listen, John, one of you, who really loves music, and you listen, I listen to your tracks. Your tracks are great. I enjoy, if that's it, then I'm happy. And that's what I would encourage for the rest of you, to be more, what I had to do was wean myself off likes. Right? Like I said, I'm not going to go to YouTube. I get, I do these podcasts. I get 50 likes, 100, I tap out about 178. Right? It's like, well, so what? So what? The fact of the matter is, I'm in a lot of different pies out there. You know what I mean? So it's a little here, a little there. That's my way of, but that's not about getting likes for certain songs. I actually, tell you the truth, I produce so much stuff that I don't have time to check on likes. And that's another option. Just produce so much music that it's just an ongoing blog, and you don't care who listens. You're so busy, you're not aware of whether, you don't have time to go back and look and see if people like it or not. If you like it, that's what counts. Like, I really dug Trish's song there, and I dig Deluded too, and I like Trish's song. I love that song about be warned, about the rulers of the earth at war with God and his anointed. I've just fantastic, and the way she sings it, and the track that came together, which was basically I can explain about this song. This song, I played that. The actual music was a multi-instrument in Contact 5. And it's called a KLI instrument, and it basically takes stems from a session, a band plays in session, and then takes that and breaks it into different loops of different areas of the song. So but see, the interesting thing about this is, on your left hand you'll have drums, you know what I mean? Next one up you'll have bass, and then you'll have like 3 or 4 different guitars, but you have to have almost 61 keys to do it all. So you start performing this thing, and like, instead of just painting loops across and kind of doing them the way they did it in the studio, which I don't want to do. I don't want to do their session. That's their session. I want to take what they did, these are great stems I was using, by the way, and I want to do my own thing. So what I did is I played the song how it's not meant to be played, right? Because if you look at all the stems, they'll have like 30 of them, right? They'll have like intro, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, turnaround, second verse, it goes by the numbers like that. Well, that's the last thing I want to use, because, these loops I've heard on Fox News, I've heard all over the place, but they never sound like what I'm doing with them. What I'm doing with them sounds unique. And for me, being a producer, these guys are like my studio band, right? But I want to take and rearrange it like they never intended it. So I'm playing it. I can change the tempo. I can change the pitch, and I do. And then I play it. I literally play the keyboard. I play the actual parts like a composer should. And then if I want to change the parts or change different things, I can. So I don't take too long doing it. I try to play it in one session, and then I rehearse it a bunch of times, and then I go ahead and do one session, one time through. And then I did this one time through, gave the mic to Trish, and she literally did one take, and that was it. It was like an hour. And yet the song sounds so polished. And that's a great instrument. The KLI is by a company called Digus, whatever. And they make these, they work with Big Fish Audio, if you want to know. Big Fish Audio, you can get the these KLI instruments, which are and they have YouTubes on them too, so you can see how they work. And they basically build an instrument within an instrument. And in that instrument, like I said, you have all your different pieces there, but you don't know whether you're playing the intro, the outro, the turnaround, the chorus, the breakdown. You don't know what you're playing. You're just playing what sounds good to you, and you're creating something totally new for yourself that you're creating as a producer that is taking real advantage of your creativity and making, though someone else recorded those sounds, it's not like just a dry loop somewhere. You're actually creating music, just like you would if you have a multi-synth, right? Like I make multi-synths for myself, and sometimes I make I like multi-instruments, or sometimes I layer synths, and I love synths, So, but when I need a backing track for Trish, I'm going to go to this. I've actually used the same set of stems. I've used them in like 3 different tracks, 3 different pitches, 3 different tempos. Nobody knows the difference. That's right, because it's being performed live by me. So you're getting me. You're not getting it. And I find that to be very exciting. And for producers out there, that's a very good way to go. Why do I do it? Because when I need a more structured, basic track, like for Trish singing or for other people, sometimes, that's a good way to go. Other times I like, working with Rich's tracks or my own or I'll just play a synth line all the way through and then start building the track from there, or play guitar and bass. I love playing bass. So I'll just do a bass line and then try to work a track around that. It can happen any way, any which way, but any good producer should be able to do lots of different things to bring a track about. You have to have, because sometimes you're dry in one area, you don't want to face the blank page. And then this KLI instrument comes along, and it's like, yeah, fine, let's play. I have another wild instrument that I use at times, which is very outdated. It's like from the 90s. It's called the transfuser by Air Instruments, which used to be part of Pro Tools, part of Avid. And then the guy bought it, and he formed, and it's called the transfuser. And you can actually do these multi-instruments and there's just tons of different stuff in there. And it syncs it all together, and you start playing. It just becomes its own instrument. And I've used that, on tracks recently, especially for comedic tracks. Yeah, but it's dated style. You could hear the dated, it's not, it's dated. I was wondering if, anyway, back to the moral of the story here. And that is the music business dropped out from underneath us. The independent artist was, looked like had great promise in the early 2000s, has no future now commercially, unless you want to form a band and go play in your band and then put your songs on SoundCloud or YouTube or whatever you want to put it. But it's really in support of your band that's out there, and get a website and do that and sell your CDs or whatever at the concert or at the club or at the bar you're playing at. That's perfectly great. I mean, I know a lot of people doing that, and that's about as far as it's going to go. The whole rock star thing is kind of over. It's very much an inside baseball, inside club thing. It's not, and again, they're looking for children, So you got to kind of, look at what you really want out of music, and you're going to have to kind of say to yourself, ask yourself that question. And then what's it going to take for you to be really happy with it, to enjoy the creative process and not look. With me, it was like I'm so busy that I don't have time to look. You know what I mean? I don't have time to interact with people. I don't have time to bother whether it's good or not. I like sending tracks in the mail where we can say, hey, what do you think, brother? What do you think? And then it could become a conversation. And I think my contribution will be to put, myself and others on the radio, and to stream that music and talk about it, because I'm always fascinated, I'm sure you are too, at what gets people to do what they do. I mean, I already heard a song from Kelly today that I would love to stream here, and I'd love to talk to her about what motivated her to do the song and what the lyrics are about, and it's very interesting. So expect that from me, and that's going to be my... I don't want to just complain about something. I want to find a solution. Okay, that's what I want to do with all this stuff. I don't want to complain about, shabby treatment when in childhood or whatever, unless it's going to lead to something that can help us all make a better world, and help us all, come to the truth. I'm just, I don't want to bury stuff under the rug if there's healing that needs to be done. And at the same time, like with music, I don't just want to sit there and go, yeah, it sucks at all. The bottom fell out and there's no mobility any which way. It's over, right? I don't want to do that. I just want to say, okay, so what would work, right? And so, what does solve it? For me, it already works because I'm very happy with the way things are and the way things are musically. And the main thing is I'm very motivated to create music because I have a need for it, because I need more and more new music, right? I don't like it when people like on radio shows play the same bumper music over and over again. I like hearing new stuff, And plus I want to see what the artist is up to. I'm sure you want to see what I'm up to or where my head's at. Let's say it gets into a really messed up space, which, probably actually the more bizarre music I do is really when I'm in a very calm space. When I'm in a messed up space, it becomes more normal because I need to hold on to a little life raft. So when I'm really calm and somewhat stable, then you can expect the horror music, which I love to do. Horrific music, like my Karma Slam piece, is horror. It's got a horrific sound to it, and that scream that I do is like I don't know if I could do. I don't know if I could do that today. Oh God, that hurts my throat. How did I do that? Now I will even the sky. I can do it with some practice, but my God, these people that do this stuff to their throats. I've done that one of Rich Keltner's tracks, and then my own here, and I'm like, I don't know if I could do this every time out. But when I was younger, yeah, I would love being called a 20-year-old. That's awesome. So I feel like yesterday, we kind of dealt with the heavy stuff. A few heavy examples of things. There's another thing that's bothering me. That is, get back to this being guilted and shamed by Christians. Job's friends, right? The use of the word should. You should have done it this way. You should have done. Well, then you should never assume that I wouldn't talk to you, or I'm hearing that in the spirit now. You should never, maybe it's with an old friend. You should never assume that there's a line and we can't, And I'm like, yes, there is a line, and I was not inaccurate. And if it gets, if the breach could be healed, then that's wonderful. But there's a line, and I'm an idiot to not acknowledge it. If I said it, the thing, I'm perceiving it's there. And if it changes, then that's great. Then I'm all for it. I'm not, there's a line and it has to be there permanently and can never be fixed. I'm hearing this already as a criticism. I'm like, why criticize that? I'm all for it, I said. If the rapture comes, I'm all for that. Whatever God wants to do, I'm all for it. There's no argument there. I wish, half the time I think, we are our own worst enemies. We get involved in petty stuff, and we just want to attack each other for petty things, and we want to become offended so easily for these petty things, like, never assume that I wouldn't talk to you. I've never, and then there's this of being offended that I assume that you wouldn't talk to me, and why not just say, hey, great, you're a better man than I thought, or you're very strong, you overcame it. I don't know, but this idea that I'm offended that you would say that, so therefore I never will talk to you, that it becomes a circular firing squad. Why do we do that? Well, maybe I've done it too. I hope I haven't done it, but why do we have to go through that? There are so many people I talk to out there that, over time, that are people that I've known in the past, and people that, and then they're kind of, I won't say spying, but they're not going to contact me, but they're wonder what they listen. The reason they listen is because, I was told this by my mother actually quite a few years ago. They listen in and they make changes in their life, and it's like, yeah, there's got to be changes in their life. That's right, mother. Like you too. Like this whole system has got to go. And very dangerous stuff. But I mean, she had told me, well, they've listened and they've gone and taken. You'll never know who they are, though. She said, you'll never know who they are. She always short sold me. She never really even knew me, So the bottom line is, yes, I understand they're listening, and I understand why there can be no contact. Because that's about the scariest thing you could ever do. And it's not because I'll never hear from them, because that's the right thing to do. My mom, I reject that. Even though you're dead for a long time, I reject you saying that. Because, they listen, but they're not contacting me probably because they're dealing with a lot of stuff and there's a lot of fear going on, and they may have programming like if you come to grips with any of this stuff, you'll destroy yourself, or there's all kind. When you start dealing with the real stuff, it gets very, very unstable very quickly and very scary. So I don't expect much, and I don't need anything. I mean, if I help you and you knew me but you don't know me now, but you feel like you could relate and you're trying to get yourself fixed too, hey, that's great. Praise the Lord. Why can't we just be happy with that? Why do we have to hold hands and sing Kumbaya, in the physical? I mean, we don't have to. Just like there's a lot of musicians that tune in, and some that are, pretty famous, that probably some that I have criticized for their lyrics. Okay. Well, you don't have to contact me and go, oh, well, I've had this great because of you, I've had this great. I don't need that. There doesn't need to be any contact whatsoever. There is no expectation of a future contact. If something I've said here affected your life in a positive way, mazel tov, awesome, beautiful, shalom. I love it. Why not? That's my Jewish roots coming out. Well, you can't hide it. It is what it is. But great, awesome. Go in peace. Don't have to, we don't have, this is not a vanity thing here where you would, oh yes, well, I better say something. There are no social graces. Forget the social graces. We covered up everything with our social graces. We covered up all the iniquities with our social graces. We completely corrupted ourselves with our social graces. So please, you don't need to ever contact me and have guilt by association. That's right. You contact me, your life is over. Contact me, you're really going to be in trouble. If you break out of your fear and contact me, you might really get into trouble. Someone really might bring a hammer down on you. So, but at the same time, you feel like you got to do something because otherwise you feel like you've been a coward, let's say, or you haven't really done what you wanted to do, or you have not really healed to the level you need to heal. Why can't we just be friends? We are friends, but there is a line. There is I didn't put it there. You didn't put it there. No harm, no foul. It's all right. You can't be like me, and I can't be like you. If you can learn something from me, I certainly can learn something from you. Then fantastic. It doesn't mean we have to be friends. It's not possible to be friends right now. No, with all this in the way, there's just no way. One day, I can tell you this, one day, I will exist. Maybe not now. It doesn't bother me. I'm good at being invisible. I've been invisible I've been doing quite a bit of stuff for someone who is invisible. You know what I mean? And if it's helped you in your life, then that is marvelous. I'm here for that. I'm here to help people. I'm not here to, just vent for no reason. I'm not here to bring up memories of traumatic events for no reason. I'm not here to just go through some horrible thing to then point the finger of blame at people for no reason. The people that you could point the finger of blame at, they need the healing as bad as I do or anybody else does. We all do. It's to help because I perceive that if we keep going this direction, our society pretty much collapses, okay? I have a daughter. She wants to have kids. I do it for her then. If or for a lot of times I feel like I'm doing it for that confused kid wandering around L.A., basically about to get picked off every other second, me, and I'm ministering to myself back then, and that actually produces a healing in me. And in so doing, it vicariously produces a healing in you, or you, or you, or you, or you, or you, or you. And in so doing, we kind of stumble along together toward peace, toward the Lord, toward the light. And being a benefit to society, not a detriment, because you're exposing things that were swept under the rug that are killing us. By exposing those things, you're doing a great service. You're actually helping to heal the world. You cannot just sit there criticizing that because you want to keep the status quo, because you don't know what's going to happen. People that do that are, they're already dead. They're already set in their ways, and they're not going to change, and then that's fine. But our society needs healing. Our world needs healing. And, one key is, with the children. One key is this, unbroken chain of abuse. All that's a global thing and protected and should not be protected, obviously. And then there's this whole Middle East thing, which is another topic for another day, about the Middle East practices of sexual abuse of children seen as normal. Absolutely unbelievable. No, unbelievable. And then we have these meetings and high-level meetings with these people, and we want to give them respect and all that. Respect has to be earned, my friend. Okay, earned. And no, if I am going to say I'm not a victim of my circumstances, I overcame them, but I had to face them. And this is the way I had to face them. Same thing with you. You're not a victim of circumstance. So you bugger your children. No, you have to face these evils and stop them. And until we as a nation, why do we as a nation not confront? We go, oh, well, that's the cultural difference between us. I'm sorry, when it gets crossing a certain line, there is, something needs to be said by the United States, by the president, and so forth. I know it's not right now. This is, whether we ever see that or not, I don't know. God can do anything, so I'm going to believe that anything is possible. I know that we made progress in human trafficking with our 2020, our prayer, 20 minutes on the 20th of each month, human2020.com for Govinda's End Slavery Initiative, End Human Slavery, which means end child abuse. Why do you think I'm involved in it? Because, of course I'm involved in it, because that's a great project to be involved in. But we're not doing it to shame people. It's not to go point the finger of blame at the perpetrators. It's to expose something to the light so that there aren't perpetrators anymore. This is what I never have understood. This, you can't say anything. You could bring down the whole society. Well, let's let society and God worry about that, shall we? Because if we keep the cancer metastasizing, it will extinguish all of us. And that's about all I have to say on that matter. We've come full circle, and we this is a marathon session. I had a lot on my mind, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah, gotta keep him at all costs. Gotta keep him at all costs. Keep him at all costs.
The news today that yours truly took a trip over to Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue in New York City. There I had a meeting with Donald Trump. The meeting was at my request, and Trump was gracious enough to agree to it. We met for about an hour, or just the
It's a crooked system, folks. It's a crooked system.
Donald Trump bashing the delegate selection process in Colorado after rival Ted Cruz cleaned up in the state, filling all 34 of the state slots at the national convention with his own supporters.
God bless. We keep losing where we're winning.
Campaign reporter Emily Stevenson.
There's been no evidence so far that Cruz has done anything that they're not supposed to do. In states like Colorado, Wyoming, where they didn't have a primary, they didn't have a caucus, this delegate selection process is the whole primary. And so the goal for the Cruz campaign, for example, is
just like a feeding frenzy. Well, after the battle, there we were. One bottle between three of us. So we got to reminiscing about the good old days.
To the couple who set aside the whole day to sell their old car and buy a new one,
your mind is not your own.
get some dinner.
So tell me, where did it go wrong for you?
Republican frontrunner Donald Trump accused the campaign of Texas Senator Ted Cruz of buying votes after his win in Colorado. The New York billionaire amassed a delegate led by winning many state contests, but Cruz has proven tenacious in pursuit of every possible delegate available in hopes of winning the nomination at a brokered Republican convention this July. Cruz's campaign has worked effectively in states where the delegate